Can I solve Pretty Little Liars Season 2 before the reveal?
Tuesday, June 14th, Pretty Little Liars is back.
Any one of these people could be A.
Watch our marathon event. Then, it's the summer premiere everyone's waiting for.
We have so much to lose.
The bodies are piling up,
Zombies don't text.
and all eyes are on the liars.
If I'm lying, where is he?
This is part 2 of my Can I Solve Pretty Little Liars Before the Reveal series. If you are watching this video and you have not watched part 1, you should do that first. But just in case we need a reminder of how things work, here's a refresher. This is not a recap of the show Pretty Little Liars. This is me watching the show for the very first time and trying to solve the big mystery of the show before the show reveals it. So after every 3 or 4 episodes that I watch, I will jump back in here and I will break down all of the suspects, theories, and clues that I have, and I lock in who I think did it. That way, when we finally figure out the big mystery, we can look back and we can pinpoint exactly how far or how close I was to getting it right. And just as another reminder, we are not trying to solve who killed Allison. The mystery that we are trying to solve is who is A. So, now that we have that all settled, let's jump into Season 2, Episode 1 of Pretty Little Liars.
This Tuesday, on an all-new Pretty Little Liars, they're trapped by their secrets and lies.
These are my friends. Am I trying to break us apart?
I just watched Season 2, Episode 1, and they really kicked off this season hot. Basically, all of the girls' parents and the cops and the whole town don't believe them. Because if you remember in the Season 1 finale, the 4 main girls, Aria, Emily, Hannah, and Spencer, there's a whole thing where this guy tries to kill Spencer and then he dies and then his body disappears. You remember? We remember. So basically the whole town, including their parents and the cops, they think that the 4 girls are lying about the whole Ian situation. But, so like, here's the thing, right? They're like, Ian died. And they're like, yeah, but where's his body? But then Ian is missing. So everybody's like, I wonder where Ian could be. And the girls are like, oh, I wonder, maybe he's dead. And everybody's like, hey, shut up. You guys just want attention. Because, if I wanted attention, I would just kill my sister's husband. That makes sense, right? When she's pregnant with his baby, take him out. So, because nobody believes them, their families are making them see a therapist. This is the therapist. She looks like a therapist. And there's a whole bunch of stuff that we're going to get to in a minute about the therapist. But first, Noel Kahn is back. Remember him? That was the guy who was trying to blackmail Mr. Fitz, a.k.a. Ezra, a.k.a. Aria's boyfriend. And then A got him kicked out of school in order to save Mr. Fitz, a.k.a. Ezra, a.k.a. Aria's boyfriend. But he did show back up in the Season 1 finale, right at the very end, as the girls were walking away from the church and they were like, oh my God, Ian died. And then we see him in the crowd of people. But he is officially back at the beginning of this season and he's dating Mona. Speaking of dating, Aria and Mr. Fitz are arguing and it seems like they're going to break up. Also, Hannah has officially told Caleb, her ex-boyfriend, to leave her alone. So it looks like he might actually be gone for good. Now, let's get back to the therapist. The girls are supposed to be talking to her about everything. However, they're afraid to tell her anything. And then finally, they all get the courage to go and talk to her on a random day, and they're just going to tell her everything about A. They're going to tell her about A. They're going to tell her about the video that they have of Ian being with Allison the night that she died, and all the stuff that they've learned. They're just going to tell this lady everything. And then A interferes. So in this episode, A sends Aria a picture of Mr. Fitz's desk from inside his apartment and says, look familiar? What's missing? And that is how the girls find out that A has stolen a key to Mr. Fitz's apartment. And that is very scary because A has potentially already killed 2 people and hit Hannah with a car. So they're thinking, oh no, A is gonna kill Mr. Fitz. But tying this back to the therapist, before they can do anything, before they can tell her about A, before they can tell her about the video and all the information, they look up on her shelf, and guess what's sitting there? Mr. Fitz's college diploma. It's just sitting there on her shelf. And so the girls, they get out of there ASAP. Because somehow A knew that they were going to show up and tell the therapist about what they know. Even though this wasn't a scheduled appointment, this was just a random, like, you know what, we got to tell this lady, let's go. And then somehow A knew and took Mr. Fitz's diploma and put it in her office. How did they even know that that was their therapist? A is always one step ahead. And this is so crazy. Hannah even makes a joke where she's like, I'm starting to think this bitch has superpowers. And I agree. A is a supervillain. Dog, A is like the Green Goblin. A small detail that I did notice in this scene that I think could probably be pretty important is Hannah is really obsessed with the therapist's shoes. And like, you know, like they make a point to like really emphasize that. So I think that it's important. But I don't know how that's going to come to play yet, but I guess we'll just have to wait and see. We do see A stalking the therapist at one point in a very creepy scene. So I'm thinking maybe A is going to kill the therapist. And my theory about like why the shoes are important is maybe the only way that they can identify the body is because Hannah remembers those are her shoes. Now let's talk about the biggest crazy plot line from this episode. Spencer, you remember Spencer and her sister. Spencer finds Melissa's phone and sees a message on it from an unknown number. And the message says, Melissa, I'm sorry, it's not safe yet, I can't tell you. And the girls, the Pretty Little Liars, they immediately think what I think right now, which is A is pretending to be Ian and texting Melissa. Because remember, seems like Ian's dead, right? But then the girls ask a question from the phone to the person on the other side of the phone, who it might be Ian, could be A. They ask a question that only Ian would know the answer to, which is what they are naming Melissa and Ian's baby. The number responds with the correct answer, Taylor. So now the girls are freaking out because apparently Ian is alive. Now, personally, I don't know about that. I think it's a lot more likely that A is the person behind the text messages to Melissa, and A just found a way, like figured out what the baby was being named. I mean, A is watching them all the time. It's not crazy to think that A overheard a conversation of what they're naming the baby. The end credit scene is from A's perspective, as always. And in this end credit scene, we see A being shown around Emily's house by a realtor. I know what you're saying. Chase, you haven't said anything about why there would be a realtor at Emily's house. Emily and her mom are moving to Texas to be with her dad, who is in the Army or the Navy or something like that. So in this end credit scene, the realtor is showing A the house, and A uses this opportunity to grab Emily's computer and wipe it. So, what does this end scene tell us? Well, it immediately tells me that whoever A is must be old enough for a realtor to show them a house and not be suspicious of like, hey, this is a pretty young person to be buying a house. Or, you know, this seems to be like a rich town, so maybe it's not out of the ordinary for a teenager to buy a 4-bedroom, 3-bath. Or maybe it is a teenager and they just look older, like they can pass for 18 or whatever. All right, so we need to lock in our guess for who I think A is for season 1, episode 1 of Pretty Little Liars. An important thing to remember is this is a brand new season and the beginning of a brand new season. However, we still need to rely on all of the information we got in season 1. So it would be really dumb to lock in a character that we just met, like the therapist. And it would probably be dumb to lock in a character that, although we knew them last season, we're pretty sure they aren't A. Just because it's a new season doesn't mean that, like, the reason that we didn't think it was them in season 1 doesn't apply now, right? Like Noel Kahn. Pretty confident Noel is not A because A got him kicked out of school. So even though Noel's back for season 2 and he's creepy and he seems like he's going to be another, like, hey, he's the big bad guy again, I'm fairly certain we should not lock him in. That being said, I don't know who to lock in because this episode, although I kind of answered some questions, not really. I think I'm just going to lock in someone who I locked in quite a bit in season 1, and I'm still pretty confident that they could be A, and that would be Lucas, the yearbook guy. He only shows up in this episode for like 5 seconds, but he's still around, and what's the point of keeping him around if he's not a bigger part of the show? Plus, I don't really know who else to lock in. So, my locked in pick for season 2, episode 1 of Pretty Little Liars is Lucas, the yearbook guy.
And this week,
I know about stuff that I wish that I didn't.
some secrets should never be uncovered.
Okay, dude. This season is even more insane than last season. So, I just watched episodes 2, 3, and 4. And I was going to watch one more before I recorded this section. However, the ending of episode 4 is so insane that I needed to go ahead and do this now. Let's start with Jason. Now, if you remember, Jason is Allison's big brother. Allison being the girl who went missing and was found dead, and Jason being her big brother. Now, I don't know if they recast Jason or if he just got long blonde hair out of nowhere. I'm going to assume they recasted him. And usually I don't like when a show just recasts a major character, but this motherfucker's beautiful. Anyway, Jason is back in town and it is a major plot. We got everyone in the town is talking about him now that he's back in town. Like Melissa, who is Spencer's sister, is like, you can't trust Jason. And the only reason she brings that up is because Jason and Ian, they were like best friends. Jason and Ian, they were tight. And Melissa is like, hey, don't trust Jason. So that's pretty suspicious. And Jason himself gets pretty intense when it comes to questions about Ian. Because Spencer is talking to Jason, and he tells him that, hey, Ian pretty much confessed to killing Allison. And Jason's like, well, did he confess? And Spencer's like, I think he did. And he's like, do you think or did he? Which, if I was to take that conversation, I would say that probably means that Ian did not kill Allison. But then again, if Ian did not kill Allison, why was Ian trying to kill Spencer in the season 1 finale? I guess it could be because he couldn't prove that he didn't kill her and he was afraid that he was about to get busted for everything. Oh well, we'll get back to Ian. Let's stay focused on Jason. We get a flashback at one point of Allison and Jason fighting, like siblings do. And Allison has hidden something of his. And the other girls are there when Allison and Jason are fighting about this thing that she has hidden of his. And she says, I have hiding places all over the house. The yard too. When I want something to stay hid, it stays hid. Until I want it to be found. Now this flashback is pretty wild because it doesn't seem to have too much about the plot of this particular episode, which means that it must have something to do with the bigger plot of the show, which is who is A and what happened to Allison. It seems like Allison has taken something important of Jason's. And when I say important, I think maybe it could be very incriminating. And that is why he's so upset that she hid it. But she hid it really well and he never found it while she was still alive. Meaning, now that she's dead, he doesn't have any way of finding it. So now, all these years later, Allison's dead and he is really concerned because all of this stuff about her death is happening. He realizes he needs to find whatever it is that she hid, and that's why he's back in town. He has moved back into their home, which was, they had sold and moved away, and then it was Emily's girlfriend's house for a little bit, and then she got sent away, and now he has moved back into that house. And I think that this would line up pretty well because he's always working on something in the house, and at one point, one of the girls walk by, and there's like a wrapped up tarp in the front yard where he's like digging a hole. And it really looks like he's like burying a body or something. And the girls think that there's someone else in that house with him that he's trying to keep hidden. The girls think it's Ian. Because remember, they think that Ian is alive again, even though they previously thought he was dead, because they sent a text message to Melissa through Melissa's phone to who they assume she was talking to, Ian or A, and whoever was on the other end of the phone knew their baby's name. So they're like, hey, only Ian and Melissa really knew about that. This has to be Ian. Ian is actually alive. And again, we will talk about Ian in a moment because things happen. But we're going to stay focused on Jason. Jenna, remember her up here? She is the blind girl. Well, Jenna and the cop, Garrett, he's at the very top up there. They are a couple now. And we get this moment where Jenna and him are talking, and she says something about the Jason thing. Now, we don't know what the Jason thing is. But if I had to guess, I'm assuming it's not great. And the whole conversation is about trying to keep whatever the Jason thing is from getting out. Toby, who is dating Spencer, he is working construction, and he's actually working with Jason on the house because he's building a fence on the property because he's hiding something, probably. Now, Spencer is trying to tell Toby not to work with Jason. She thinks Jason's bad news. She thinks he's hiding Ian in the house. She doesn't want her boyfriend being a part of that. And by the way, someone is definitely in that house with him. I don't know if it's Ian. I don't know who it is, but someone is in that house because he's covering the windows and he's trying to keep people from going inside. And the show is just throwing all of this Jason stuff at us. Just boom, boom, boom. Lots of Jason. So it seems like Jason is our new main suspect. The issue is, I really like Jason. He's very nice to Toby, even though Toby was the main suspect of his sister's murder pretty recently. And he's given Toby a job. And he's just really nice to him. But there is definitely something going on with him. He keeps having these conversations with Melissa. Like he says, hey, Melissa stopped by here a few times. And when Spencer's like, why has my sister been stopping by here? He's like, oh, some of my mail ended up at your house, so she was bringing it by. But then at one point, he like drops a trash bag and there's like bloody rags in it, which, kind of suspicious. Now let's switch gears and talk about the other half of that best friend duo, Ian. Quick reminder, at the end of season 1, we see Ian die, but then Ian's body disappears. Everyone thinks he's missing. Things get even more complicated this season because Melissa is texting someone who she believes to be Ian. But the girls don't think that's possible because they saw Ian die, so they ask a question that only Ian would know the answer to, the name of the baby. They got it right. So now the girls think that Ian is alive. There's a bunch of wacky stuff going on in town, and the girls think that all of it is connected to Ian, like someone has been breaking into houses. And they've been like stealing camping gear. And so they think, oh, Ian is stealing this camping gear because he's hiding out in the woods. And then someone breaks into Spencer's house, and they're upstairs, like in Spencer's bedroom. Arya happens to stop by, catches them in the act. They're wearing like a black hoodie. You can't see their face. So they have to attack Arya. They like push Arya down so that they can escape. They think that that person was Ian, and that the reason Ian was up in her bedroom is because he was going to kill Spencer. I think it's more likely that whoever that was A. And A was doing something and just happened to get caught this time. But yeah, their big theory is Ian is camping out in the woods in town. Melissa is visiting him in the woods. Or Ian is staying in Jason's house where he's staying hidden. And that could be why Melissa kept dropping by. And Melissa, we keep overhearing these little phone calls with Melissa where she's like, no, she's still awake. Stay down the road until she's asleep. She's talking about her sister. But then we find out that Melissa hasn't been meeting with Ian because she's been texting who she thinks is Ian, but that Ian or whoever's on the phone won't tell Melissa where he is hiding. So Melissa's having to wait before she can see him again, or at least that's what she thinks. I can't stress this enough. This is getting complicated, but there is a result. Melissa has been meeting with her ex-boyfriend, the one who fell in love with Spencer. He is a doctor, and she has been meeting with him to get medicine or something. I'm guessing it could be for Ian after his fall. We see Melissa packing bags. We see Melissa packing passports for her and Ian. So Spencer knows, hey, my sister is about to meet with Ian. And it looks like they're leaving town. They're leaving the country, baby. So she meets up with Melissa's ex-boyfriend, the doctor. His name is Ren. I think he's up there. Yeah, he's that guy. He has been helping Melissa, but he still feels like something's off. And so he lets Spencer and the girls follow him and Melissa because he's going to be taking Melissa to meet up with Ian in the woods. So the girls, Emily, Hannah, Spencer, Aria, they follow Melissa and Ren. They're driving through the woods. They end up at this shack. Melissa walks into the shack and screams. Inside this shack is Ian's body with a gun in his hand and a suicide note. This is where it gets crazy. Here is what the note says. I killed Allison. I lost my temper because she knew too much, but there's only so much you can bury. It won't be that easy, but pain is scratched out. I know how to get rid of pain. I can't hide is scratched out, run from the law. Come and find me. So let's break this down, shall we, friends? Right off the bat, I want to make it very clear that I think Ian died at the end of season 1. I think he actually died right there. The reason his body disappeared is because A took the body. And I think that A has been keeping Ian's body in the woods this entire time while A was texting Melissa pretending to be Ian. And A's coming up with this whole plot of how Ian's just in hiding and they're going to run away together and leave the country. But the whole time A's doing that, it's to buy time so that they can plan or prepare something that A has going on. I don't know what that is. Now, the cops and the whole town think that Ian is alive, that he's just run off. They didn't believe that Ian was actually dead. So A was in the clear to keep Ian's body hidden in the woods because no one was looking for Ian's body. And then whatever A was planning or working on must have been ready because then A set up Ian's body to be found. A has planted Ian's body and written a suicide note confessing to the murder of Allison. Officially, this will end the whole investigation of Allison's death because Ian has confessed. Now, I don't quite understand why A had to go through all of these hoops and obstacles because Spencer heard Ian pretty much confess to Allison's death. So if A would have just left Ian's body where it was that night, everyone would have believed Spencer and been like, oh, he confessed and tried to kill Spencer. And that would still achieve the same goal, I imagine. However, maybe A just wanted to really make sure that since A was the one that pushed Ian, that it couldn't, no one, because then there would be a new investigation of who killed Ian. So maybe A just wanted to make sure all of their tracks were covered, made it look like a suicide, and then their hands are clean. That was a lot to break down. Pretty insane couple episodes, if you ask me. This show is just super good, though. And there's still more to break down, so buckle up. So basically the whole time that all this Ian and Jason stuff is going on, A has been very busy. Let's start with the ring situation. Melissa can't find her engagement ring. However, Spencer does find the engagement ring. But instead of giving Melissa her engagement ring back, she decides to pawn off the ring so that she can buy Toby a truck. And then she's like, well, I'll just get the money to buy a truck. And then Monday, I'll go get the ring back. The issue is that right after Spencer leaves the pawn shop, A walks in and buys the ring. So now A has Melissa's engagement ring. And when Spencer goes back to get the engagement ring, the pawn shop guy gives her this old horseshoe and is like, that's what you gave me. And she's like, this isn't what I gave you. And he's like, oh yeah, I think it is. Quick note, that horseshoe came from the same shack that Ian's body is found in. So do with that information what you will. Meanwhile, A has also been messing with Emily. Now remember, Emily is about to move to Texas. But then, a swim team, Emily's on the swim team, there's a recruiter for a college that shows up and is like, hey, we would really like you at our school. But you can't move to Texas. And so she goes and she tells her mom, and her mom's like, okay, if you can get it in writing that he's going to give you, a scholarship, then we'll figure something out. We won't go. But turns out the guy's like, hey, I can't guarantee you a spot right now. You still have like a whole year. So A sends a fake guarantee scholarship letter to Emily's mom. And Emily is like, what? And then A sends Emily a message saying, you can't play cat and mouse if the mouse moves to Texas. I need you here, Em. Congrats, -A. Absolute insane behavior from our resident supervillain, A. Oh, and I think that A is about to kill again. I mentioned in the last part about the therapist and about how it seemed like A was stalking the therapist. Well, in episode 4, A trashes the therapist's office. And then A leaves a message in the office that says, nosy bitches die. And there was no sign of forced entry. So that means that A had a key. And it doesn't help that the A break-in happens right after Hannah has like a one-on-one session with the therapist. I'm thinking that A is threatening and going to potentially kill the therapist because A is afraid that the girls are going to tell the therapist too much. Because as much as A seems to be in control, if the girls trust the therapist enough to tell her about A, it could be game over for A. Now, all of that been talked about, let's talk about some of the little clues and theories that I have for these few episodes. At one point, Mona calls Aria Big A, which is pretty hilarious. It's kind of like, oh, well, maybe Aria is A, but I don't think that makes any sense. Speaking of Aria, Mr. Fitz, her boyfriend and English teacher, no longer works at the school. He got a job at the college where Aria's dad works. So now they're not even being very secretive. Like they're just kissing in public at the college where her dad works. Now, the only reason I bring this up is because Ezra's ex-girlfriend also teaches at the college, and she sees him kissing Aria. Also, Aria is taking a pottery class at the college, and Jenna, the blind girl, happens to be in the same pottery class. So, we'll see how that goes. Spencer has a dream at one point where her and the girls are seeing a movie. And I'm pretty sure that the movie that they are watching is the old silent film version of Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, which I could be wrong about. I couldn't figure out exactly what the movie was, but it seemed like it was that one. If it is that movie, which I think it is, that could be a pretty cool little hint, a little clue about my someone having a different personality. Caleb, if you'll remember him, that is Hannah's ex-boyfriend. He was called the Sketchy Kid last season. He left town, but he's officially back in town and living with Lucas, the yearbook guy, which is kind of wholesome because they're friends now. Except Lucas could potentially be A, so maybe it's not that wholesome. Aria's brother, Mike, right here, he is supposed to be playing basketball every day after school, except Aria goes to talk to him one day. He's not there. Turns out he hasn't been going to play basketball every day after school. So where is he? Plus, he's been acting worse and worse because of his parents' whole divorce and getting back together thing. And I'm starting to think that Mike is hiding something, and he could be a real contender of being A. I mean, he's sneaking around. We don't see him that much. He lives in the same house as Aria. And that's pretty much everything that's happened. A whole lot has happened, but I still don't have a good theory on who A could be. Because here's the thing about this show. As it goes along, I'm having a harder and harder time figuring out, A could be anyone, or A could be none of these people. Like, for each character, I have a list of at least 10 reasons they could and could not be A. Like, what character fits all of these crazy things that we have been building up the last 26 episodes? What character is able to know impossible things? What character could be everywhere all the time? What character could have potentially killed several people and has a personal vendetta against these 4 girls in particular? There's a lot of characters who fit some of those categories, but there's not a character who fits all of those categories. I have been locking in the yearbook guy, Lucas, a lot because I feel like he is at least the closest of checking all of the boxes. He's a loser. He doesn't have any friends. He's always got a camera because he's on yearbook. He could be strong enough to kill Allison or push Ian and carry Ian's body. He was bullied horrendously by Allison. But he's really good friends with Hannah now. And I genuinely believe that he would not want to hurt Hannah. So who else even is there? I mean, we were talking about Mike, Arya's brother, but like, how would he know about Allison's secrets? Why would he have it out for his sister and her friends to the point of killing multiple people? There was my Mona theory from last season, but that kind of goes in the same category as Lucas the yearbook guy. She is good friends with Hannah, and she seems like she really wants the best for Hannah. And then there was a really big theory I had in the last video for season 1, where I thought, hey, maybe one of the 4 main girls has DID, which means that they could have multiple personalities. And just to be clear, I'm not insinuating that the reason that they are killing people is because they have that disorder. No, I'm thinking that could be the best explanation for why they would not know that they did it. I don't even think that's how it works, but I'm trying to like think of like what a 2010 teen drama would come up with. But I'm starting to think that theory doesn't even work at all unless they're working with someone else, because again, we have multiple scenes where all 4 girls are together when A shows up or A does something. So they would have to be working with someone else in order for that to work. Then there's my multiple A theory, which, hey, maybe the reason that no individual character fits all of the categories is because it's multiple characters. But I don't know who those multiple characters would be. Like if it's 2 people, Jason has been a pretty major suspect so far in this season. Maybe it could have been both him and Ian. And then he had to kill Ian to get the cops off of his back. Actually, I really do like that theory. I think it's pretty dumb to lock in Jason right now because at the moment he is the show's major red herring. So it would be, usually you don't want to pick who the show is saying, hey, it's probably this guy. But that would make a lot of sense. And plus we still have this whole new mystery of who is in his house. Could it be A who's in the house or his partner and the both of them are A? Like even if it's not Jason and Ian who are A, maybe it's Jason and someone else. Maybe Mike. Hey, where's Mike been going after school? Maybe he's going to Jason's house. So yeah, you know what? Even though I think it's probably a dumb idea because he's the show's main red herring right now, I am going to lock in Jason for episodes 2, 3, and 4 of season 2 of Pretty Little Liars.
And this week, the closer they get to the truth,
I'm gonna need answers, and I'm not getting them here.
the deeper they fall into a trap.
All right, I just got done watching episodes 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. I probably should have checked in earlier, but the problem was I got super invested. I just kept watching episodes. This show is great, by the way. So, as a refresh, since it's been a little bit since I've jumped in the stew, at the end of the last part, Ian's body is found dead. This is Ian. Remember, he is Melissa's husband and baby daddy. Melissa is Spencer's older sister. There was a suicide note, and that suicide note confessed to the killing of Allison. Allison, of course, being our titular character who was killed after being missing for a whole year at the beginning of season 1. I know you guys know this because at this point, you've probably, it's probably what, like the first video was like almost, it was like 3 hours. And then this one, you're probably like an hour or so in. So you know this show. I know this show. Who am I kidding around? Have you even watched the show or are you just watching these videos? Well, when it was time for me to lock in my pick in the last part, I locked in Jason. Now this is Jason with a new face and a better haircut, in my opinion. Jason is Allison's older brother who is now back in town. Now the reason that I locked in Jason is because my thought process was maybe Jason and Ian both killed Allison, and then Jason had to kill Ian in order to get the cops off of his trail. Do I think that that is still a good theory? Yes. However, is it the theory that I'm rocking with after watching like 5 more episodes? Probably not. One of the things that we learn in this batch of episodes in regards to Ian's death is that when they found his body, he had been dead for at least a week. It seems like we were right. Ian did die that night at the church, and then or somebody moved his body to that shack in the woods. Well, what about the suicide note that had a confession to killing Allison? What about that, Chase? Well, I'm glad you asked. Sends Emily a message. And in that message, it says, "Hey, Em, is it just me, or does that suicide note look familiar?" And Emily was like, "No, it's not just you, It does look familiar." And Emily finds out that that suicide note was made up of messages that had previously sent. Now, once the girls realize this, they get on the same thought process that I'm on, which is Ian didn't kill Allison, probably. My guess is, and their guess is, that faked the suicide note to confess to the murder so that way Ian will take the blame for the murder posthumously. You know, the one where they're dead. And then at the end of episode 5 of season 2, it is confirmed to the girls that Ian did not kill Allison. Sets up a projector in the graveyard, which pretty baller, and it's the same graveyard where Allison and Ian are both now buried. And the projector is showing the video that we had previously seen and the girls had previously seen where Ian and Allison are talking the night that she dies. However, this time we see way more of the video. Usually it just ends when like the camera falls and then we see Allison's hand and it like grabs the dirt. We see that Ian does not kill her and he walks away, leaving Allison by herself. So now we know that Ian is being framed. Now, they're also like, hey, well, if faked the confession, does that mean that killed Allison? Hey guys, don't make fun of my voice, okay? Don't make fun of my voice. I've been battling a cold. Hey, don't make fun of me. Now, I have struggled this issue the entire time, right? I'm trying to solve who is I'm not trying to solve who killed Allison, but they could be one and the same. That is what makes this mystery so difficult. We don't know how many people we're looking for. Like, we get some clues that point to Allison's killer, and then we also get some clues that point to who could be. The hard part is figuring out which clues are which. Because if they're not the same person, if the person who killed Allison is not also then I could be using clues to try to solve who is that don't pertain to who is, right? So I could have, in theory, written off one of these suspects because I'm like, oh, well, they obviously couldn't have killed Allison. But that's the thing. Maybe if didn't kill Allison, then they're not written off. They should still be a suspect. Does that make sense? This is so confusing. Anyway, has really started to target Emily at this point, which is kind of nice because up to now, Emily hasn't had much to do. Now, this is Emily's mom. Now, Emily's mom has moved to Texas, but Emily is staying at Rosewood. So, while Emily is staying behind, she is staying with Hannah. And this causes to send some cute little messages about that. What fun! 2 little liars under one roof. This is so easy. And it turns out it is easy because not long after that note, Emily crashes to the floor at school and has to go to the hospital. Now, once we get to the hospital, we find out that she has an ulcer. That probably has nothing to do with right? Wrong! Because everyone assumes, it's just from stress. Emily's got a lot going on. That's not the case. Turns out Emily's on steroids. Turns out that has been putting steroids in her Icy Hot. And since she's at the hospital, the steroids come up on the medical records. Has a copy of those medical records showing that Emily was on steroids, which means that if Emily doesn't behave, can leak the medical records showing that Emily has been on steroids and she can get her scholarship taken away. She can get kicked off the swim team. She'll lose trust in her parents and, just ruin her whole life, basically. So much like has done with Hannah in the past, is making Emily do these little games. Like, she makes Emily get her girlfriend's friend's number. Now, that makes Emily's girlfriend think that Emily is hitting on her friend, and so Emily's girlfriend breaks up with her. This is classic A shenanigans. In episode 10, Emily is having some cereal, and all of the letters in the alphabet cereal are the letter A, which, by the way, great supervillain work from A here. I mean, just another example to show why A is the GOAT. The Joker has nothing on the real greatest supervillain of all time, A from Pretty Little Liars. The cereal also has a message in it. The weak link is easiest to break. Snapping yet? Now, A has messed with all of the girls together and individually, and now it's Emily's turn. But A seems to really be going hard in the paint on Emily. Now, granted, Hannah did get hit with a car, so you could probably say Hannah had it a little worse, but A is going hard on Emily. Actually, I take that back, because what A does to Emily next is way worse than hitting Hannah with a car. Emily is getting a massage at a spa place. And you know, it's a massage place, so Emily's got her head down in that little hole thing. She's laying down, so she can't see what's going on. And also, she's naked. It's a spa place. I've never gotten one, but I assume that's not uncommon. And she's talking out loud as she's getting this massage. She's like, man, this massage feels really great. And so she goes through this whole massage, and then after the massage is over, the massage therapist walks in the room. And she's like, hey, sorry for being late. Are you fucking kidding me? And Emily's like, huh? What do you mean? We just started. And then she looks over, and there's a little glass of water on the table, and in the condensation of the glass of water, the letter A has been written in the condensation. Dude, A was massaging Emily in the room. If Emily had looked up, she would have seen who A is. That's how ballsy A has gotten. And just how absolutely horrific is this, dude? And it makes it worse because A sends Emily a message right at that moment that's see how easy it is for me to get my hands around your neck? Dude, are you crazy? This is an Avengers level threat, okay? A is too much for these teenage girls to handle. We gotta call in the Air Force or something, dude. So let's, I know it's kind of hard to transition from that, but let's talk about Jason. So Jason shows up to Ian's funeral, and he has this moment with Arya at the funeral where he's telling her he feels so much better now that Ian has confessed, because it turns out Jason was so high the day that Allison died that he couldn't remember if he did it or not. And he was just really scared that he was the one that did it, and he just had no clue. But what he did have is a note that he received that day or that night or whatever that said, I know what you did. And he doesn't know who that note is from, but his worry was that, he thought that note was from Allison and then went and confronted her about it. Now, if you ask me, I think that means that he did not kill her. But it also tells me that he did something that he's worried people will find out about that he would be willing to kill over. Or at least be worried that he might have killed over. Because if he's worried that he might have killed Allison to protect that secret, must be a pretty big secret. And then there's a whole bunch of stuff about Jason and his mom. Now, for those of you who have not seen this show, you probably got a little worried when I said that, because this is definitely the kind of show that would have Jason sleeping with his mom. But don't worry, it's not that crazy. See, Jason's mom and Spencer's dad, this guy, have been fighting a lot, secretly, but also in public. And whatever they're fighting about, it seems to be about why Jason is back in town. So I'm not sure what that's about yet, but I think it's probably important, especially after what we see Spencer's dad do later, and we'll get to that. Now, do you guys remember my theory about I think that Jason is back in town and back in his childhood home because he's looking for something that Allison hid? And he even tells Arya that he has been looking for something. But he says it in a way that's not super suspicious, and so it's the kind of thing that we as the audience should pick up on, but it's not thrown in your face. So I think it's a good clue. My guess as of now is whatever he is looking for is evidence of whatever he did that was that secret that he was afraid of Allison knowing about. And does that make sense? Like, he's looking for it because Allison knew his secret and he doesn't want that secret to get out. I think that makes sense. Now, this is where these batch of episodes get super crazy. And I know what you're saying. Chase, they've already been super crazy. They get way super crazier. So, do you remember Jenna and her boyfriend, the cop that she's been sleeping with or whatever, Garrett? Well, remember when they had that conversation and they talked about the Jason thing? Well, there's a conversation between Jenna and the cop in these episodes where she says something like, hey, Jason might be starting to remember things from that night. And then she also says that she's worried about the girls finding out about Jason. And she's like, do they know about Jason? We need to take care of this. Side note, apparently Jenna is going to be getting some sort of experimental surgery that could potentially let her see again. So that's pretty crazy. Anyway, when it comes to who the girls currently think killed Allison, they all think that Jason killed her. Well, I say they all think Jason killed her. They all except Aria, who's kind of conflicted because she kind of likes Jason, you know? I mean, what's not to like? I mean, look at his hair. But Spencer and Emily break into Jason's tool shed. And inside the tool shed is a dark room. So it's completely red. It's for photography. And the whole shed is covered wall to wall in pictures of Aria sleeping, which is so fucking weird, dude. And then they also find a box of surveillance gear. Now, this is very obviously pointing a strong finger at this dude is A. However, I think it's just a red herring because get this. Aria and Jason end up kissing, yada yada, teen drama. But she confronts him about the pictures of her sleeping. And he's like, oh, dude, I found a roll of film and Allison's stuff. And so I was developing it. And then it was a bunch of pictures of you sleeping. And so I thought, oh, well, maybe she knew about this. And so I was going to frame them for you and give them to you as a gift. Now, Aria totally believes him, which is, I wouldn't believe him, but that's besides the point. Anyway, so Aria believes him, but then Spencer stumbles on some old yearbooks. Spencer and her boyfriend, Toby, they're they find some old yearbooks, right? They're going through these old yearbooks. They find, it's Ian's old yearbooks. They're throwing out his things, and they look at his picture in the yearbook. And with his picture is a list of what clubs that he was in. He was in drama and sports, and then there was one thing that said NAT Club. And they're like, that's weird. I've never heard of NAT Club. What's that? And they searched the rest of the yearbook to see if anyone else was in NAT Club. And they can't find anything else about NAT Club except that Ian, Garrett, the cop, and Jason, all three had NAT Club under their pictures. And then Spencer finds a shirt of Ian's that has some Latin words on it, and they start with the initials NAT. And those Latin words translate to we see all. So now, the Pretty Little Liars, the four main girls, they know that those three guys were really close. Garrett the cop, Allison's older brother, and Ian. Well, obviously they're like, oh, so these three guys, they did it. My theory is that these three dumbasses were just doing drugs and peeping Tom on people. Is that a verb? Peeping Tomin'? They were just being peeping Toms. They were in girls' windows, taking pictures and videos of them getting changed. And they're just doing a bunch of drugs, and they're just being morons. And then I think something happened. The three of them, including maybe Jenna, because remember, she's a part of this as well somehow. They all did something that was a big deal. And it caused them all to swear to secrecy, which I'm guessing became an issue because Allison probably found something that exposed that secret. And that something could be the evidence that Jason is trying to find in the house and get rid of. And that same thing could be what caused Ian to freak out and try to kill Spencer. And that would explain what has Jenna and the cops so worried about the Jason thing. Now, this is all just speculation on my part, but if you take all of these pieces It seems like the four of them all did something very bad, and then they were like, okay guys, we cannot tell anyone about this. And they're really scared of it getting out. Now, the immediate guess is like, oh, well, what terrible thing could the four of them have all done? And it's like, well, probably killed Allison, right? But I'm not so sure, because it seems like whatever it is that they did happened before Allison died. Because remember, Jason received that note before Allison died saying, I know what you did. And that was what caused him to go and confront Allison. Well, we don't know if he confronts Allison. He can't remember anything about that night, but he thinks that he would have gone and confronted Allison. Which, that brings up another point. Why can't he remember anything from that night? He says it's because he was so high. But if you remember what I said, these two were talking and they were like, oh, I think he's starting to remember stuff from that night. So that leads me to believe that they drugged him, right? But why? Guys, this is all coming together. We're getting all of these little pieces and we're getting them into the web. And all we got to do is like put these puzzle pieces together in a way that makes sense. But I think we do have all of the pieces. Now, I also want to bring up that Melissa, that is Spencer's older sister, may also be involved in the stuff that the other four of them did. You know, Jenna, the cop, Jason, and Ian. I think maybe she was involved because at one point she was going to reveal something to Spencer. But before she can reveal it to Spencer, A had planted Ian's phone in Spencer's bag and then sent a message causing it to go off, which made Melissa think that Spencer was the one texting her as Ian when Ian was actually already dead. So of course Melissa gets very upset, is no longer talking to Spencer, and she doesn't even know that Spencer pawned off her engagement ring yet, which A has been threatening Spencer over. Like, A sent her a message that was like, tell the truth, Spence, or else you'll get that ring back when you least expect it. So we have that to look forward to, I guess. But back to the confession thing. I feel like she was about to confess something pretty big about Ian, and it could have been that big secret that, you know, the other four are trying to keep secret. But whatever it is, I'm thinking we'll probably figure it out pretty soon, because at one point, Aria like accidentally helps Jason find what he's looking for. I think because Aria slips into a conversation very subtly when she's talking to Jason about how when Allison got home from Georgia, she didn't go straight home. She actually stopped at Emily's house first. So I'm guessing Jason is probably like, oh, Allison may have hidden it at Emily's house. I got to go look in Emily's house. The issue is Emily's family is in Texas. Emily is not living at the house, and so they're renting it out while no one is using it. And the renters, you know, they have like the renters have like, you know, a security alarm and stuff. And, you know, I only bring up the security alarm because they really make a point to like bring up that the new renters needed the security alarm. So I think that's probably going to be a problem. I'm assuming that Jason will then break into Emily's house while the renters are in there. However, he's not going to find the murder weapon because we found the murder weapon. Yeah, that's right, dude. So Toby, Spencer's boyfriend, was doing some work for Spencer's dad. This guy. You know, he's just clearing up the land on the property, you know, trying to make some room. And while he's doing that, he finds like the broken end of a hockey stick that has Hastings on it, which is Spencer's last name. And Spencer's dad gets like super weird about it and like takes the hockey stick and then later that night burns it. And Spencer knows about this because Spencer's there. And Spencer's like, oh my God, I think that was the murder weapon. Because right before Allison died, Spencer had actually given her that hockey stick. And she knows that Allison had it in her bedroom. So how did it go from being in Allison's bedroom to broken and thrown in Spencer's backyard? And not just like, it wasn't just like laying in the grass. Like it was like buried in the backyard. So logically, the girls have to break into the morgue at the hospital and they steal Allison's autopsy report. Which, by the way, this scene gives us this really creepy moment where A is pretending to be a dead body in the morgue. And when the girls leave, A like gets up. It's really creepy. Like under a sheet. A is under a sheet. But A has stolen a page from the autopsy report. But we don't know what's on that page, but I'm assuming it's incriminating. But from the other pages of the report, the pages that they do have, they learned that Allison's murder weapon was a curved, blunt object. You know, like the end of a hockey stick. So it does seem like this hockey stick is the murder weapon, and we get a flashback to the day that Spencer gave Allison the hockey stick. Allison is like pretending to use the stick, and then Jason, her older brother, shows up, takes the pretends to hit her with it. Ha! So, you know, that's an implication. Now, in this same flashback, it's insinuated that Allison only wants this hockey stick because she's interested in a girl that is also in hockey. Like, Allison does this little like tongue-in-cheek moment thing where she's like, hey, just because I play the field a little doesn't mean I'm on the team. The implication being that just because she's interested in a girl doesn't mean that she's gay. I think. I don't know what that has to do with anything, but that is like the implication of the scene. Because, you know, there's also the whole thing where she was like leading Emily on all the time and using her sexuality as like a weapon against her. And we have been very suspicious of all of the potential male love interests of Allison, but maybe we need to be looking into some potential female love interests. Now, one more thing about Allison's autopsy, and then we can move on to the next thing, is the blunt object cracked her skull. But she also had dirt in her lungs, which means she was buried alive. So that's pretty dark. Okay, that was a lot of information that we just went through. I hope it was like coherent, but we got more. Okay, now that we have gotten all of that information out of the way, let's start talking about suspects. We have learned so much information in these episodes. So, are we any closer to figuring out who A is? Right off the bat, I want to throw out a pretty big theory, which is that Jason is A. Or on an even more grand scale, I want to throw out the theory that Jason, Jenna, Garrett, and Ian are all A. That is kind of the most obvious of all of the theories. Spencer in episode 10 even mentions, hey, maybe it's a group of people. I do not think that this is the case. I think that the show wants us to think that. I think that that is the big red herring theory right now, and we need to look past that to like the deeper stuff. Which leads me to a theory that I had a while ago, and I started to suspect again, which is Mona. Mona starts showing up a whole lot more in this batch of episodes. And then there's like this memorial that's going to be happening for Allison at this like fashion show, this annual fashion show that happens every year, and Allison really loved it. And so they were going to make like they have like a little memorial video, a little memorial part for it. However, someone switched the discs that were to be played, and I'll just say it wasn't a memorial. It was a video of Allison with like devil horns, and the song "The Bitch Is Back" is playing, and there's like big text that calls her a monster and an evil bitch. Now, Noel Kahn was the DJ at this event. He has been dating Mona. So my first thought was, oh, he could have switched the discs. Spencer is the one who handed him the disc, and Mona is the one who handed it to Spencer. So I was like, I'm onto something here. Especially when you think about how Emily was getting drugged with steroids with her Icy Hot. She's living with Hannah. Now, who do we know is always at Hannah's house? Hannah's other bestie, Mona. But then in episode 10, two things happen where I am like 99.9% sure that Mona is not A. The first thing is that Mona is with Hannah at like a horse ranch at the exact same time that Emily was getting her massage. So therefore, Mona could not have been the one that was there giving her massage. Plus, while Mona is with Hannah, it just truly seems like she cares for Hannah and wants to be there for her. I do not think that she is faking being Hannah's friend. I don't think she would hit Hannah with a car. Also, if A moved Ian's body from the church that night after he died, I don't think Mona would have been able to move that giant man's lifeless corpse by herself. So we're throwing out that theory as well, which leads us to the next big thing, which is Spencer's dad. He was arguing with Allison's mom and Jason He burns the murder weapon. So pretty suspicious. Kind of lines him up to be like Allison's killer potentially. It would be a pretty out of left field pick for him to be A. Like, what are you doing texting teenage girls all day, dog? So there's that. But also, I have another pretty out there theory. We still haven't figured out who Jason is hiding in the house with him. We 100% know someone is in that house, but we have not learned who. So this is a pretty wild theory, okay? But what if Allison is the one in the house? What if Allison is still alive? She and Jason have been working together and doing this giant scheme, the two of them. They're both A. Jason has been doing like the heavy lifting part, and then Allison is sneaking around, doing the text messages. Now, the big question then is why? And I don't know why. I have no idea. Maybe it has something to do with that big secret that Jason has. But yeah, no, I don't know. I'm really struggling. Like, I feel like it could be anybody, and it could also be none of them. I am still suspicious of Ezra, by the way. Haven't brought him up in a while. He is still dating Arya, don't worry. But that definitely seems like it's going to be blowing up pretty soon, which I am looking forward to. Maybe it'll be a big thing where it's revealed that not only is he getting busted for dating a teenager, but he's a manipulator and a terrible person. And he could have been A all along. I doubt it, though. One of the parents, it could be one of the parents. Because that's what's so weird about A, dude, is A seems to be always watching and listening. Like, even in private, intimate conversations. Like, it'll be Spencer and her mom having a conversation in Spencer's bedroom. And her mom walks in to her room, gives her a hug, and she tells Spencer that she is sorry that she did not believe her. And right at that exact moment, A sends Spencer a message mocking that hug. Like, how in the blue fuck does A know that Spencer's mom walked into the room and hugged Spencer right at that moment? Now, my only theory of how that is even possible is, their phones and computers are all bugged, which would point us to Caleb, Hannah's boyfriend, because he's really good with technology and he's a hacker. I don't think it could be him, though, because he's not around that much. And he's actually gone again at this point because he found his birth mom. So he's like going to visit her for the first time. So yeah, he's got his own stuff going on. I don't think he has time to be doing all this. So like, who does that even leave suspect-wise? Like, Mike? Arya's brother? He's depressed and he got in trouble for breaking into people's houses. Toby? I mean, he was like the big red herring in the very beginning, but like, he's just doing manual labor and trying his best, Arya's dad could be a good suspect, but here's the thing about that. If he is actually A, then he would already know about Ezra and his daughter's relationship. And I just can't see that guy being okay with that. So who is even left up here for us to pick? We eliminated the whole like Jason and Ian and Garrett the cop thing because that is obviously what the show is like pushing. So then it's like, okay, there's got to be multiple A's then maybe, right? Like if it can't be one of these people, maybe it's a couple. But I've already, I don't think it's these two, Jenna and the cop. I don't think it's them. So that leaves like Jason and Ian's dead. But I do think that I could be onto something with the whole whoever is in Jason's house. Like, it could be Jason and whoever's in his house. Maybe it's Allison. Maybe not. And that's kind of cheating if I just locked in, okay, it's Jason and whoever's in Jason's house. Because we don't know who's in Jason's house. But that's the only theory I have that makes sense. Like, I'm so confused. I don't even know what I've been talking about the past 2 minutes. I do think it's Jason and whoever's in his house. So I'm going to lock in Jason again, but with the caveat of whoever is in the house with him is also doing it. Okay, that is my locked in pick for who I think A is for episodes 5 through 10.
And this week, they're ready to move on, but someone won't let go.
I will never forgive you.
Pretty Little Liars.
Episode 11. This is one of those episodes where so much happens, I was like, let's just go ahead and talk about it now. So, the girls, our four main characters, they go and speak to their therapist. and they actually tell the therapist about A. Now, this is the very first time that they have ever told anyone about A, and the therapist seems to really want to help them. So she is actually taking action and trying to help them figure out who A is. Well, A doesn't like that, and we already know that A was following the therapist. And remember a while ago when I was like, dude, I think A might try to kill the therapist. Well, the first thing that A does is send the therapist a threatening phone call. And in the phone call is a recording of the conversation that she was having with the girls during the session. So she calls the cops and she's like, there's a bug in here. You need to find it. And not a bug like an insect, like a recording device. Like she didn't think there was like a cockroach. But the cops couldn't find anything. But it doesn't help that one of the cops there is Garrett, the one who's dating Jenna. So then the therapist, she's searching through all her records, right? Not vinyl records, not music, like written documentation records. And she's looking through the notes that she's made about our four main characters, Aria, Emily, Hannah, and Spencer. And then she moves on to some other files and she finds one that says, calls their enemies nosy bitches. And the therapist is like, oh my God, I know who A is. So the therapist calls Emily and she's like, yo, get the girls and get to my office ASAP, fam, because I know who A is. And so the girls, they all rush to the office. The therapist is gone and A sends them a message. And the message says, the doctor is out, -A. I think A killed that therapist in order to hide their identity. And we find out that A did in fact have the room bugged, and the bug was hidden underneath a bobblehead of Sigmund Freud. Now, if you don't know who Freud is, I don't really either, but I Googled him, and, I hear his name just kind of used in the pop culture zeitgeist. He's like the father of psychoanalysis or something like that. It's like the theory of how, like, the mind works. And that kind of is another little hint that maybe my theory that one of the main characters could have multiple personalities. But before we get ahead of ourselves and start flying down that theory that we've already debunked 8 times, right beside the bobblehead of Freud is a little statue of a red fish. A red herring, perhaps? So that leads me to believe that was just done by, the writers, and they're like, or the director or whoever, and they're like, this will be a fun way of being like, haha, it's just a red herring, and it might be. To be honest, I don't really know anything about the show when it was airing at the time, like the pop culture following of it. Like, for all I know, that could have been like the leading theory at the time of the people watching weekly, and so maybe they did that as like a little tease of like, hey. Okay, so moving on past the possible murder of a therapist, we still have a lot to talk about. Spencer catches her dad leaving Jason's house. And so they have a big fight. And it ends with her dad telling her what it is that she has been arguing with Jason and his mom about. He tells Spencer that about a week after Allison had originally disappeared, that her and Jason's grandmother died. Now, this is the grandmother that Allison was visiting down in Georgia. Well, it turns out that the grandmother changed her will right before Allison disappeared, writing Jason out of the will. So when Allison disappeared, and then right after the grandmother passes away, they hire Spencer's dad, who is a lawyer, to change the documents to make it look like he, Jason, was never written out of the will, because they were afraid that it was going to look really suspicious that maybe Jason killed his sister over the will. And Spencer was like, why would you do that? And he gets weird. And she's like, what does that family have on us? So let's break that down, shall we? And I think the best way of breaking that all down is to go through the events of Allison's day, the day that she disappeared. Allison was in Georgia visiting her grandmother. We learn in a flashback during this episode that Allison was planning on getting her brother Jason disowned by their grandmother, because she was going to tell her that he pawned off a family heirloom in order to buy drugs. So we can only assume, since she verbalized her plan that way, that that is what she did. And it must have worked because immediately the grandmother removes Jason from her will. So then Allison goes back home. The first thing she does is go to Emily's house. Now, we know that Jason has been looking for something. Perhaps it is this family heirloom that Allison claims Jason sold. Jason probably assumes that it's at Emily's house. Now, let's fast forward because we don't know everything that happened that day, but we do know some stuff that happens that night. The girls are all having a sleepover in Spencer's barn. It's the 5 girls, our 4 main characters, plus Allison, because she's still alive. We know that that night, Allison slips away and has a fight with Spencer. Then, after that fight with Spencer, she meets Toby. After she meets up with Toby, she leaves and goes to like the makeout park where she meets Ian. We know that Ian leaves Makeup Park and Allison is still alive and there. Now, we don't know what happens next, but we do know that at the end of the night, she gets hit in the head with a blunt object and buried alive, where she is missing for the next year before her body is found. So, what does that tell us? Spencer has a theory that Jason, Allison's brother, killed her over being removed from the will. But what if that is not the case? Remember, we have all of this stuff going on between Jason, Garrett the cop, Jenna, Ian when he was still alive. In fact, Garrett and Jenna went and visited Jason again. I'm assuming they were talking about whatever that big secret that they all have together is. We know that Allison was planning on telling her grandmother that Jason was going to sell the family heirloom to buy drugs. But what if they didn't actually do that? Because she probably lied about it. But what if they did have something else planned with that heirloom? And what if that heirloom is like the only way to prove their innocence or even indict them on a crime or something? Like that heirloom is really important to find and keep a secret. Now, does that mean that those 4, Jenna, Garrett, Jason, and Ian killed Allison? I don't know. Possibly. However, I do think that it does not make them A. However, that being said, in this episode, we get another moment where Spencer mentions the idea that, hey, maybe A is a group of people. But don't forget, by the end of this episode, the therapist says, I know who it is. One person, an individual. So that makes me think that this is one person and it was a patient of the therapist. I think that what could be going on with Jenna and the cop and Jason and all that is something entirely different from what we're dealing with, which is who is A and also like who killed Allison. It's not what we're trying to solve, but I do think that that has more to do with A than whatever it is that they've got going on. So, who could A be? There's a few things that happen in this episode that point at some certain suspects. Mike, Arya's little brother, who we have mentioned a few times, is really going through it. He is really depressed. And in this episode, he's on his laptop and he's messaging someone. And Arya's like, who are you even messaging? And so that made me think, oh, maybe he is A. Maybe he's working on his A messages. But I think what would be even more likely than that is whoever he was messaging is A. A could be messaging him, pretending to be his friend, getting in his head, making him so depressed, putting these thoughts in his head that are making him spiral more and more about his parents' divorce and about his family. Like maybe A is the person who convinced him he should break into those houses in the first place. And then at one point, the therapist actually shows up at the school and is giving like a talk to the students. It's like all the like graduating seniors or something like that. I don't know. But the therapist uses this moment to talk about cyberbullying and harassment. And the therapist is kind of making a pointed statement at A. And while the therapist is giving this speech, the camera focuses on a few individuals. The cameras lock in on Arya, Emily, Hannah, Spencer, Mona, and Lucas, the yearbook guy. Mona and Lucas are 2 people that I have accused frequently, in Lucas's case, of being A. So that leads me to believe that the show wanted us to see those two during the speech. Now, I have dismissed both of those suspects as being A. Why? What do those two have in common? I don't think it could be either of them because of their relationship with Hannah. Isn't it strange, and I know I'm just now realizing this, I've written both of them off for the same reason, because I truly think that they have a true friendship with Hannah. How convenient. I mean, these two characters are kind of the same character. Both of them are specifically friends with Hannah and not the other three girls. They were both bullied and harassed by Allison before she disappeared. They both have ups and downs with Hannah, and they both do things that they think are best for Hannah. Like Mona trying to get rid of Caleb for her. And then Lucas bringing Caleb back into town for her. That's really fucking weird, right? So my gut reaction is like, oh my God, I think these two are A. But then we go back to the fact that the therapist says A is one person. And I think that she's probably right, because then A kills her over it. If the therapist was not on the right track, if the therapist was accusing someone who was not A of being A, then A would probably find that really funny and let it play out. So if it's only one person, then that eliminates that theory, which leads us all the way back to Jason. It seems like all roads lead back to Jason. We have the stuff with Spencer and her family and them talking about like, hey, what does this family have over our family? Then you have the whole Jason being involved with Jenna and Garrett and Ian before Ian died. So I'm like, if this theory is so obvious and this stuff seems so obvious, then who am I missing? It's got to be someone I'm missing. There has got to be someone on this wall looking at me dead in the face and I don't even suspect them. Is it a parent? Is it Mike, Arya's brother? Which led me to realize that there has been one character who has been a major character all the way back in episode 1. They are in every single episode pretty much, but they never have anything to do with A. And everyone likes them, and they're such a good person, and they seem very wholesome, but with one major flaw. And that's the fact that he's dating a 17-year-old student who just so happens to be one of the main girls being harassed by A. He was in the high school as a teacher when they were saying stuff like, oh man, A has to be at the school. He's always with Arya near her phone. And the biggest thing is he has yet to get caught for dating his student. Like when he was about to get exposed by Noel Khan, he just so conveniently got saved by A. I think that the big blow up of Ezra and Arya dating is coming fast. And when that happens, I think it's going to be a pretty big deal. But he has been a major character for so long that I can't see their relationship blowing up and it just being like, okay, I guess he's done now. He's out of the show. I think down the line, he is going to be exposed for being A, right? Like maybe he's just this manipulating, terrible person. And this is not the first time he's done something like this. It's not just, oh, gee golly. I mean, they're in love. They know it's wrong, but it's love. This never happens. What if it happens all the time? And I don't even know if I've mentioned his whole ex-girlfriend and ex-fiance storyline, because typically I avoid some of the more like teen drama plots and I focus mostly on just stuff that have to do with A or Allison's death. But Arya was jealous because Ezra's ex-girlfriend or ex-fiance or whatever works at the same college that he does. And Ezra, tells Arya about how he proposed to her. And then she ended things and, he was so in love with her, but she broke it off. And then the ex-fiance runs into Arya at one point and is saying, she says something like, oh, it's so nice to be young, but one day you'll see how naive you are. Because remember, the ex-girlfriend and fiance or whatever saw them kissing at the college. And we assume in this moment that she's taking a shot at Arya, right? But what if she's being sincere? What if she ended things with Ezra because he's a manipulative, terrible person and she was trying to warn her? And, meanwhile, Ezra is talking to Arya like, oh, gee, oh, gosh, oh, man, I was so in love. I didn't do nothing wrong. She just didn't like me, I guess. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. Hey, Chase, I think you've lost it. How would this grown man even know these 4 girls before he met them as their teacher? Well, I'm glad you asked. If we go all the way back to season 1, Ezra was a local college student at the same college that he now teaches at before he graduated and became a teacher at the high school where Arya goes. We have also learned in this show that Allison used to sneak into college parties, one time even bringing her 4 friends with her. And Allison was going to those parties to have flings with people like Ian. Ian was a student at the same college as Ezra. And then Ian graduated and started coaching at the high school. It is completely logical that if Allison met Ian at these college parties and had a fling with them, that Allison could have also met Ezra and had a fling with him. Maybe they got together. Ezra, being an insane person, started stalking her and her friends. She tries to end things with him, or maybe he finds out about her fling with Ian, he snaps and he kills her. Then he gets a job at the same high school as her friends and starts dating Arya, who he so just conveniently ran into at a bar. I am the best detective this world has ever seen. This is a theory, baby. I'm locking that in. That's good detective work. I'm the best, dude. My pick for who I think A is for episode 11 of season 2 of Pretty Little Liars is Ezra Fitz.
It's a Pretty Little Liars fashion event gone wrong.
Dude, I don't know what's going on, but this show has kicked into overdrive. Again, I was planning on watching the next few episodes and then lumping them together as one section, but so much happens in episode 12. This episode starts with all of the girls, the 4 girls, in a police interrogation room, and they are covered in dirt. And the evil cop from last season is back. You remember him. He was the one who was sleeping with Hannah's mom. I think his name's Detective Wilden. More like Detective Wilden. Am I right, ladies? Please like and subscribe. Also, the therapist who we thought was murdered is not dead. A sends the girls a picture of the therapist holding today's newspaper so that way we know that she's still alive. So I guess A is just keeping a human being captive, huh? What an absolute supervillain, bro. If Robert Pattinson's Batman had to go up against A instead of the Riddler, I don't think he would have won. The Riddler couldn't shine A's boots, dog. A sends a giant crate into Spencer's living room with a note that says, "Open or she'll die." So they open up the crate, and inside of it is a note that says, "You have until 7 p.m. to save her. Here are my demands." And if that's not creepy enough, you're probably wondering, Chase, what is in the crate with the note? Terrifying dolls. And the dolls all have a little drawstring. When you pull them, they say something. Arya's doll says, "Make Jackie go away." Jackie being Ezra's former girlfriend, fiance lady. And the doll comes with proof of Jackie plagiarizing on a very important paper. Hannah's doll says, "Ruin the wedding." Her dad is getting remarried in this episode. So Spencer's doll says, "Keep Toby safe," which essentially is saying, hey, you need to break up with Toby. And to be fair, it probably would be the best way to keep Toby safe. I mean, so far, A has cut Toby's brake lines, which, by the way, they just kind of mentioned that in a passing way. Which, like, in my opinion, like, that could have been way more suspenseful. Like, they could have, like, had a moment where he's trying to brake, but he couldn't brake. But instead, they're just, like, in an offhand line, they're just like, hey, it's a good thing you weren't on the highway, huh? Emily does not get a doll yet. So, Arya goes, she blackmails Jackie. Jackie leaves town. But then, Jackie pulls the Uno reverse on Arya and starts blackmailing her. And she says, if you ever come for me again, I'm going to expose your relationship with Ezra. Spencer breaks up with Toby, which really sucks because this guy finally found a lady who won't call him a creep or accuse him of murder. And then Hannah ruins her dad's wedding by, like, literally right before they're about to say I do. She tells her soon-to-be stepmom that her dad slept with her mom recently, which is true. So, like, to be fair to Hannah, that's really not on her because it's like his own actions did do that. She's just the one who told on him, you know? So it's like, you know, it's kind of hard to be mad at her for that, but people. Oh, and this is when the show gets absolutely insane, dude. Emily is about to pull up to the wedding, and then her GPS is saying to turn right. But that's interesting because the wedding is very obviously on the left. Somehow, A hacked her GPS. How do you even do that? A may or may not be working for Steve Jobs. Emily looks in her back seat. There is a doll there. And the doll says, I'm taking you to her. Go alone. So Emily goes to where the GPS is taking her. And then the other girls who are at the wedding, which is not a wedding anymore, gets a text sending them the same address to go to. But Emily gets there first, and then it's like a barn, and so she goes and she checks the barn. The barn has a running car inside with, like, you know, like the fumes trapped in the car in there. So, you know, Emily runs in because she thinks the therapist is locked in that car. She's not, but A locks the barn with Emily inside. Emily passes out from the fumes, and she is about to die. But someone drags her out of the barn. And who pulls her out of the barn? Allison, the dead girl. But this is like some sort of dream state, almost dying vision. And Allison is saying stuff to Emily like, hey, you can go back or you can stay here with me. You can be away from A. You can just stay with me. So I guess that means that Emily was about to die and then like the ghost of Allison pulled her out of the barn. But when Emily's friends show up, Emily's like, guys, she's alive. She was here. Emily thinks that Allison was literally there. And her friends are like, that's not possible, man. You were knocked out. This was just a dream. Which makes me be like, well, then who pulled her out of the barn? But we don't really have time to think about that because then A sends them a message on a shovel that has some coordinates on it. And the girls are like, oh no. And so they go to the coordinates and they've got the shovel and it seems like the therapist was buried alive by A. So they start digging, you know. And that's when the cops show up. And there is not actually a body under that dirt. This was all a ploy and the girls get arrested. And we find out that the evil cop, Detective Wilden or whatever, is back on the case because he had some information that I guess proved he was onto something, so they put him back on the case. Because remember, he's been trying to prove that the girls had something to do with Allison's death. And now it looks even worse for the girls because the shovel that they were holding in their possession, because A gave it to them with a message on it, was Allison's murder weapon. So they have now been found by the cops with the murder weapon. Hey, we haven't even gotten to the craziest part of this episode because I think we find out who killed Allison and potentially who A is. Maybe. While the girls are being kept in the police department, there is a lot going on. But Jenna shows up to see her boy toy, the cop. And they have the most insane conversation in this entire show. So Jenna says, oh, we couldn't have come up with a better plan. I wish I could see those bitches right now. I wish they knew what we were doing to them. Are you ready to give up your career in law enforcement? And Garrett's all like, hey, I can't quit yet. I can't wait to get out of this stupid uniform. But I've been waiting months to get into that storage room. I can wait a little bit longer. And Jenna's like, are you still worried about Jason? And Garrett's like, he's definitely figured out he's not the one that killed Allison, but he doesn't know we're the one that wrote that note. Bro, what? And then Garrett the cop has the missing autopsy page and he gives it to Jenna and he's like, hey, burn this. He's like, it's over, Jenna. There's nothing else that can tie us to that night. And then Jenna says she deserved to die that way. What does this mean? So let's break that down. Now, I'm afraid that this is like being purposely misleading, but that conversation seems to confirm that they are the ones who did this whole plan to the girls to get them caught by the cops, and they are the ones that killed Allison. When they say the thing about he doesn't know that we wrote that note, the note that they're talking about, I believe, is the note that Jason found that made him think after the fact that he went and got Allison because of it. We've talked about this. Now, I also think that when Jenna is like, I wish they knew that this was us that was doing it to them, I think what they mean is that they set them up with the murder weapon to get caught, but also they could be talking about something else, because it really seems like A has to be the one that set up the girls. So that would make Jenna and Garrett A. And I mean, they could be A. Like, that could have been the reveal. I'm not so sure, but when Jenna first walks into the police department to talk to Garrett in this episode, it's in the same point of view shot that all of the A cut scenes at the end are shot in. So that leads me to believe that Jenna has been A this whole time. However, something happens at the end of this episode that makes me think that we did not get our big A reveal after all. In the end credit scene thing where we always see, from the point of view of A, we see A at a diner with the therapist. And the therapist says, "I did everything you said." And A hands her an envelope, which means that either A blackmailed the therapist into leaving town, or A paid the therapist off to make her leave town. Regardless, A did not kill the therapist. But the interesting part about this is the waitress, when the waitress sees A at the diner, the waitress says, "What can I get for you, pretty eyes?" Which means that she could see A's eyes. Jenna wears giant sunglasses, which means that the waitress would not have been able to see her eyes. Here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking it is very possible that Jenna and Garrett killed Allison. That mystery might just have been solved, but I do not think that they are A, which means that the mystery that we are trying to solve is still going on. We're going to keep watching. So, that being said, let's hit some more points of stuff that happened in this episode. Emily's old girlfriend Maya is back in town, and Hannah points out that she's wearing very nice, fashionable boots. A few episodes back, in one of the end credit scenes from A's point of view, we see A buying some very nice, fashionable boots. These could be the same boots. That is suspicious. And then we have the entire situation of Emily being in that barn. Who pulled her out of the barn? And Emily seemed so sure that Allison was actually there and alive. Could she have been right? Could she have been alive? Or was she just in a dream state and someone else was talking to her and she just thought it was Allison? Oh, and then we have this absolute insane conversation that happens between Spencer's dad and Jason. Jason shows up to the police department while all of this is going on, and Spencer's dad walks up to him and he's like, "What do you think you're doing here?" And Jason's like, "I think my sister would want me here." And they argue, and then Spencer's dad is like, "Hey, I told you the truth last night because I thought it would help." And Jason's like, "No, you told me because I didn't give you a choice. Why do you think I bought that house? I knew what I would find." Allie was great at keeping secrets, but she was also great at punishing people with the truth. Baller line, by the way. And Jason keeps going, and he's like, "And does she even know?" And he points to Spencer's mom. And Spencer's dad is like, "No, and she's not gonna find out." So, my big theory is that this whole conversation was over the fact that Jason is actually Spencer's dad's son. When Jason says, "I think my sister would want me here," we immediately take it as, oh, this could have been they're being accused of killing his sister. And he's like, "I think my sister would want me here to find out that her friends kill her." But maybe what he meant was his sister would want, he was teasing him, saying that his sister is actually Spencer. because if he's Spencer Dad's son, that makes him Spencer's half-brother. The statement he makes about Allison being good at keeping secrets but being good at punishing people with the truth makes me believe that Allison knew that Jason was not her real full brother and found a way to bully Jason about it or like abuse him with that information. Because we haven't mentioned it in a while, but Allison's the devil. In fact, maybe that's what she did to get him written out of the will in the first place. She said that thing about, selling the heirloom to buy drugs, but what if she actually just told her grandmother that Jason isn't actually their full-blood relative? Rich people are weird like that. Back to the A stuff, Detective Wilden claims that he has, indefutable proof that proves that the girls killed Allison other than the murder weapon, but, what is that evidence? And then there's that statement that Garrett made about, I've waited months to get into that storage room. I can wait a little bit longer. What storage room and what is in it? And who is A? If A is not these two, then who could it be? Was A involved in tricking the girls to getting arrested? Or was that completely them and A actually had nothing to do with it? Which I should say that the message in the crate that Spencer received did not have -A written on it. But all of the blackmail stuff with the therapist and all that stuff did. So, and plus making them break up with Toby and blackmailing Ezra's ex-girlfriend, that's all stuff that A would do. So I don't know why these two would even care about that. I'm so confused, dude, because we pretty much got a blatant confession from these two, and yet I'm more confused than ever. And it could just be them. That could have been the reveal that they're A, but we still have 13 episodes left in this season. I don't see why you would do your show's big reveal just in the middle of the season. Someone else has to be A. That's the only thing I can think of. So, who do I lock in? Even though we learned so much about so many different things in this episode, I'm going to stick with my Ezra pick. Which, by the way, in this episode, Arya's mom actually confronts Ezra. She walks up to Ezra and she tells him to leave now or she's going to tell everyone what he's been doing. You see, a little backstory to this. Arya's mom thinks that Ezra is dating Spencer because she walked by and saw them talking in a car once. And so she was like, oh my God. Well, Ezra has no idea about that. He thinks that Arya's mom knows the truth about him and Arya. And so he goes, but I love her. And Arya's mom is pissed. And she's like, if Spencer's parents found out? And Ezra's like, what? So I'm thinking that this whole Ezra-Arya situation is going to be blowing up very soon. And maybe when he gets revealed for being, dating his student, that maybe some A information about him will also be revealed. Right? Well, that's my locked-in pick for Season 2, Episode 12 of Pretty Little Liars, and I'm so excited to keep watching.
And this week, no dirty secret ever stays buried.
It could be evidence.
Arya.
Pretty Little Liars.
Hi guys, real quick before we jump in the next part, this video does not have a sponsor. Not for any moral reasons. I would love a sponsor. But I did want to take a second just to say I have another channel called Written By, and I'm an actor and writer. And so if you want to see the short films that I make, you can subscribe over there. There's a link in the description. And also I wanted to point out that I do have a Patreon. This video, the last Pretty Little Liars, all my videos, they come out a little bit early over there. So that's really kind of the only incentive, but it's like $2 a month, and a little goes a long way in supporting me in the channel and making more videos like this. So thank you guys so much. Back to what's really important, which is Pretty Little Liars. I've watched episodes 13, 14, and 15, and to be completely honest, it's been hard not to just come and check in after every single episode because so much has been going on. The first thing that I want to talk about is episode 13, and kind of looking back on it, I should have done that by itself because it's a different episode than anything we've seen in this show so far. It is a flashback episode, so the whole episode takes place before Allison was killed or disappeared or whatever, and it's also a Halloween episode, so it's super fun. This show really rules, I do want to say, and we get a lot of really cool stuff in this episode. Most of it is just bits and pieces of information that we kind of already knew, but then there's some pretty big moments. So I'm just going to go ahead and rapid fire some key information that we get in this episode. Ian and Melissa are dating during this time, and they go to the Halloween party dressed as Bonnie and Clyde. I took this to mean that, potentially Melissa was involved with Ian and his crimes. Mona and Lucas, the yearbook guy, both get bullied by Allison pretty heavily in this episode. And we even see Mona and Lucas sit together at lunch and talk a little bit. When they talk, it's after Allison makes a particularly nasty comment about Lucas. And after she does, Lucas looks at Mona and says one day she'll get what's coming to her. Which is pretty wild considering in the last part we talked about those two potentially working together and being A. That theory gets even more crazy during the Halloween party when Allison bumps into Mona and goes, "Do I know you?" And Mona says, "No, but you will soon." Then, moments after that, we see Mona and Jenna pre-blinding incident, and they meet and seemingly become friends. Then Allison sets up a prank with Noel Kahn where he will dress up as this creepy baby thing and pretend to kill her and scare her friends. And the prank goes on and it gets pretty realistic. And then we find out that Noel Kahn didn't actually make it to the house to scare them in time. So we don't know who was in that baby outfit actually trying to kill her. And then we see Lucas, the yearbook guy, wearing that same costume, and he seems pretty upset. So when that happens, I'm like, oh my God, did they just reveal that Lucas, the yearbook guy, is A? But then immediately after that, we see A. Well, I assume is A. And it can't be Lucas. So this show used this episode to really play into some theories that we've been buying into and be like, yeah, you're right. Psych, you're wrong. But we do know that it was A in the babyface costume, or at least one of the baby costumes, because A sends a message. And A sends the message to Allison. So this is way before the girls know about A. And it says, "Dying to find out who I am, -A." And we know for a fact that it is not Lucas because Lucas was standing right there when the message was sent. The show is really trying to push Lucas on us as the major suspect in this batch of episodes. So that would make him the biggest red herring. And they push Mona pretty hard in this batch of episodes, which I think means the show, I'm assuming, because I don't know when it was airing, I'm assuming most people maybe suspected these two. And so it's kind of like, yeah, here's making them look really suspicious. Just that way they can take the rug out from under us. Now, to be clear, I do not think it is Lucas and Mona. I just think that the show wants us to think that it's Lucas and Mona. And the big reason I do not think it's them, I'll get to in a moment. So when we get back to our regular timeline after the flashback episode, we jump about a month in the future after the main four girls were brought into the police station with the murder weapon. The whole town seemed to think once again that those girls killed their friend Allison. And it seems like the four of them have been fighting amongst themselves. Aria and Ezra have broken up. No one has seen Jason since he showed up at the police station that night. And Emily has seemingly had a huge falling out with the other three girls. She even gets in a physical fight with Spencer during their community service litter pickup. You know, they're doing litter pickup because they're criminals. But guess what, guys? They are not actually fighting. This is all a trick to play on A. And it works. A thinks that Emily is no longer a part of the group. And so A asks Emily if she wants to make a deal. Meanwhile, the girls are talking about this evidence that they have on A that they are afraid to take to the police. A convinces Emily to take the evidence to A in exchange for no longer being a victim in A's game. Emily shows up to the drop-off spot, but she's with the other girls. They trick A, and A is furious. A tries to kill Emily. And A's doing a pretty good job until the other girls get there and it's a brawl, baby. A manages to get away, but gets hit by Hannah's car, which that's a great callback. I mean, what better payback for Hannah than hitting A with her car? But A does get away after being hit with the car, but A dropped their cell phone. So now the girls have A's cell phone, which is super exciting. So they take the phone to Hannah's boyfriend, Caleb, who is still around, but he just occasionally goes to his birth mom's. And they're like, hey, can you get up in this phone? And Caleb tries to get some stuff from it, but A kills the phone from A's computer. So the phone is pretty much worthless, but Caleb is like, I think I can try to get some stuff out of it. I'll keep trying. And he does manage to get one picture off the phone. And the picture is of the creepy dolls that the girls received previously. So now that we've talked about what happened, let's get into the real juicy stuff. The girls are almost positive that A is actually Jenna and Garrett the cop. The issue is when A shows up that night to get the evidence from Emily and they get in that big tussle and then A gets hit by the car, that could not have been Jenna. Jenna is blind and so obviously wouldn't be able to like parkour like that. And while it could have been Garrett, it really didn't seem like it was. It did not have his build whatsoever. And then also, Spencer overhears Garrett on the phone with Jenna, and it seems like the two of them are over. Now that their job of whatever it is that they've done is over, Jenna has thrown him to the curb. And while they're on the phone or whatever, Garrett's like, we should have never asked him to help. It should have just been the two of us. Now, I don't know what that means, but Toby tells Spencer that Jenna and him hadn't started fighting until A lost their phone that night. So Spencer assumes that that is what they're talking about. Talking about, hey, we should have never asked him to help. They think whoever they hit with the car and got the phone from is someone that these two got to help them. And whoever it was that they trusted to help them is who lost the phone. Meanwhile, Lucas, the yearbook guy, is acting super weird. And he started acting super weird after the girls got A's phone. So we start to put two and two together, and it's like, oh my God, I think they got Lucas to do that. And Lucas is the one who got hit with the car and dropped A's phone. And this isn't just a theory that I have. This is a theory that the girls have as well, because Emily is doing some of her community service at a crisis hotline, and Lucas actually calls the hotline, doesn't realize that it's Emily that he's talking to, and he says that he lost something the night before. And he's like, I might as well be dead. I've messed up big time. So the girls are like, oh my God, Lucas is definitely who Jenna and Garrett sent that night in their place to be A. But Hannah is defending him because Hannah's a good friend. And Hannah's like, there's no way that he would do that to me. And frankly, I agree. I think that this is all a big coincidence. I think Lucas was calling about something else, and it just so happened to happen at the same time as this whole A phone debacle. My theory about what he could be calling about is I think he is still in love with Hannah, and I think maybe he's just having a crisis because he feels like he can't be friends with her because like he needs to end this friendship because he also was good friends with her boyfriend Caleb, and he doesn't want to, you know, he just can't be friends with her because it hurts his heart so much. But he doesn't want to be like confess his feelings for the 20th time and break them up because they're great. I mean, not that they would break up because Hannah doesn't like him like that. You know, when 25-year-old men lock themselves in a room and talk about a teen drama for hours and hours and hours. Anyway, the girls think that he is definitely involved, and it doesn't help his case when he calls the crisis line again and Emily picks up again. And this time on the call, he says that he has to end things tonight and he is never going to see her again. And so the girls are like, oh my God, he's going to kill Hannah tonight because that night is Caleb's surprise party that is being held at Spencer's lake house. And Lucas and Hannah, they go out onto the lake on a little rowboat because they've got to set up the fireworks. And Lucas starts getting really weird. And Hannah starts getting scared because, you know, they think maybe he could be trying to kill her. And then Lucas gets kind of aggressive. And then before he can even like get out what he's trying to say, Hannah freaks out, hits him off the boat, tries paddling away, flips the whole thing. Everyone is on shore freaking out because they think that they've both drowned. But then Hannah swims to shore. She is okay. But Lucas is nowhere to be found. So let's break that down. We're going to go based off of what I think actually happened and not what is kind of being insinuated happened. So Remember what I said? I think he just wanted to end the friendship or whatever. And I think Hannah was just paranoid because of everything that's been going on. All of her friends are like, we think he's involved. He's trying to kill you. She's like, he would never do that. But then there's this weird moment in the boat. They're isolated. He gets aggressive. She panics, throws him off the boat. So I think Lucas is not involved at all with the A stuff. I think he is just a good friend and he does care about Hannah. But the paranoia from the girls, probably brought on by A, caused him to be caught in the crossfire. And I just really, really hope that Lucas is not dead because, one, I like Lucas. Two, that would mean Hannah murdered him. Anyway, back to the whole Jenna and Garrett situation. The girls seem pretty confident, almost positive that they are A. And to be fair, good for them because we practically got a confession from them a few episodes ago. But I don't think that's the case. I think the show is tricking us. Now, that being said, I don't think that they're A, but they've got to be up to something, you know? Maybe they did kill Allison, but I do not think that they are A. But that being said, it seems like Jenna has dumped Garrett, and he is really, really upset by it. Some information that we get based off of the photo that they got off of A's phone, the picture of the dolls, Caleb finds out that that photo is actually taken at Spencer's lake house up in the attic, which means that A has been using Spencer's family's lake house to do stuff. So that's interesting. Oh, and I forgot to mention that when Hannah washes up on the shore after the whole Lucas drowning potentially situation, Mona and Noel Kahn are soaking wet. And they're like, why are you guys soaking wet? And they're like, it's a nice night for a swim. So my theory is like, hey, why would they be in the water if it wasn't for nefarious reasons? And then I was like, oh, they're teenagers in a teen drama. They might have just been skinny dipping. Because it seems pretty obvious like that, you know, hey, they're soaking wet. Why would the show even bring that up if it wasn't like, oh, this is suspicious? But I think it could be a red herring because if you go back to the flashback Halloween episode, the show was blatantly pointing the finger at Mona and Lucas, like practically screaming at us, these two are A. But then after everything we've talked about him, you know, I think he just got caught up in I don't think he's A. I don't think she's A either. I just think that the show really is pushing us to believe that those two are A, so that way we don't pay attention to who is really A. But that being said, on the off chance that they aren't just huge red herrings, a big reason that Mona and Noel Kahn could be wet is because maybe they jumped in the lake to save Lucas. Because we can go all the way back to my theory from a long time ago that A is actually a whole bunch of people that used to be bullied and harassed by Allison, which would lead me to the whole dash A, dash A, sometimes no A mark on all of these messages. It could be a whole bunch of people are A, and it could be explained of like, well, one person always does one dash, this other person uses two dashes. Like that could explain some of the inconsistencies that happen. But the one thing that I cannot get over, and my main reason that I don't think that the whole bunch of people are A theory is true, is I 1000% with all of my heart do not believe that this man, Lucas the yearbook guy, would ever do anything to hurt Hannah. I think he is a good person, and I think that he is a good friend. And although I'm not as passionate about her as I am Lucas, I do not think Mona would ever do anything to hurt Hannah either. I just feel it in my heart. These are good friends. So that leads to my big theory that I've been really banking on being true, and that is my Ezra is A theory. There are some complications with that theory now that that whole relationship has blown up. I know, the moment we've all been waiting for. Ezra ended up telling Arya's parents about their relationship, and it did not go well. They were furious. Mike, Arya's little brother, punches Ezra in the face. Arya is grounded and forbidden from seeing him again. Her dad wants to call the police on him. It's a rough situation, but I would like to add, well deserved. He's a grown man. dating a student that he was a teacher of, you know? You're going to get punched in the face. So, because of that, it does kind of seem like that storyline could be over. And it really, like, I was kind of hoping when that blew up, other things would be revealed that could maybe implicate him as A, but that didn't really happen. And so I think I should be looking for other suspects, which leads me to, I know you guys are going to make fun of me for this, my next theory, Allison. Now, I know Allison is dead, but hear me out for a second. We have seen her show up a lot. Because remember when Hannah got hit by the car and she was in the hospital that night and she saw a vision of Allison, and Allison was like, I needed to come by. I got to get back. I only risked this because I thought you were going to die. We just thought like, oh, that's just Hannah's morphine making her have visions. But then when Emily almost dies from the fumes in the barn, we see Allison again. And this time it seems like Allison actually like physically moved her body from the barn to outside of the barn. And again, it's like, oh, it's a vision. But what if it's not? We still have not figured out who is hiding in Jason's house. Could it be that Allison was in a bad situation, so Jason and Allison worked together to fake her death? And Allison, who cannot give up torturing and tormenting the people around her like puppets, and she is the puppet master, has continued to taunt them from the grave. But that doesn't explain the whole Jenna and Garrett situation. It doesn't explain the Ian and Jason stuff. It also doesn't explain almost anything else. Like, because remember, in the flashback episode, Allison was receiving messages from A. And A, like, tried to kill her. I am truly lost. I don't know. I don't have any substantial theory other than the Allison is still alive theory. The only other, like, logical theory I have is that the show actually just revealed it the other episode, and it is Jenna and Garrett, and then that's the end. I don't think they would do that. It wouldn't make for a great season of television. So I'm going to lock in Allison as who is A for season 2, episodes 13, 14, and 15 of Pretty Little Liars. Oh, man.
With an all-day marathon of secrets hosted by the guys of Pretty Little Liars. Then at 8, the Liars take danger to a whole new level.
I need to take care of this.
Episodes 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, and 21. This season had reached a point where we were checking in almost after every episode, and now that the season slowed down just a little bit here towards the end of the season, I figured we could lump a few of these together. And I think the first thing that we should talk about is the Lucas situation. Did Yearbook Guy drown? Is he dead? Well, no, to both of those things. We learn pretty quickly in episode 16 that Lucas is not dead. And then it becomes a whole thing, and the girls still think he's trying to kill Hannah. He pops up in Hannah's house. It's very spooky and dramatic, and he finally gets to tell Hannah what he had been trying to tell her this entire time. No, he's not A. No, he wasn't helping A. He has a gambling problem. I know. Turns out he had taken some money that Caleb had given to him to keep safe because he doesn't have like a bank account or whatever. And Lucas gambled it all away, and he felt terrible about it. And so he started hitting all the comic book stores and like selling off his collectibles to get the money back to give to Caleb. So it seems like that whole storyline was just there to make us heavily suspect Lucas as being A really huge red herring that luckily we're too smart to fall for. Another interesting thing that we find out is that A has been like staying in Spencer's family's lake house. There's like a ton of burner phones up there, which is very interesting considering on what we're going to learn here in a little bit. I'll get to that. Throughout this big chunk of episodes, the girls are getting closer and closer to finding out who A is. At first, it seems like their best bet is that Caleb is still trying to get some sort of information from A's phone. And some of the information that he does, in fact, recover is a video of Ian, Garrett, and Jenna on the night that Allison died. They're in Allison's room looking for something, and Garrett says something like, "You've gone too far." And they're looking around. They find the box of Allison's things that Aria actually has now because Jason gave her a box of Allison's old things. And the video that they extracted, they were only allowed to get, they were only able to get a part of the video, and the part that they were able to get stops right after they get the box and they look at the box. So the girls think that they were all in Allison's bedroom. Allison comes in, they kill Allison. But they can't know for sure what happened until Caleb can get the next part of the video, which is getting more and more difficult because Garrett the cop, who is in the video, has started watching and following Caleb. At the same time, A is threatening Hannah to get Caleb to stop, sending Hannah a message that said, "Call off your techno boy or I'll tell the cops what your mom keeps in the lasagna box." A is, of course, referring to the money that Hannah's mom stole from the bank that she works at. And then right after that message, Garrett straight up threatens Caleb. So we see that both Garrett and A are both trying to achieve the same thing, which again kind of insinuates that Jenna and Garrett are A. But Jenna isn't even with Garrett anymore. They've broken up. Jenna is dating Noel Kahn, which is pretty crazy because we suspected him a long time ago of being A, but then he got burned by A. A set him up to get suspended from school. But now that he's with Jenna, he's up to his evil activities again. We see him attack Aria on the roof of the school before Aria's like childhood best friend that she's been hanging out with a lot, like karate kicks him. And it turns out the reason that Noel was even on the rooftop with Aria was because he was looking for Caleb. So again, that lines up with what A is trying to do, which I assume means that Jenna is A and Jenna's just making her new boy toy do her dirty work. Kind of like her old boy toy, who is also trying to get Caleb to stop hacking the phone. Now, when it comes to what our four main characters, who they suspect almost everyone at this point. They think the same thing we do. They could potentially be A, Jenna and Garrett. They also suspect Noel Kahn, and they suspect Jason, Allison's older brother. However, I'm almost 100% confident that Jason is not A. But before we talk about that, Garrett and the cops get a warrant to take and search Caleb's computer because A actually steals Caleb's computer, puts something super incriminating on it, and I guess tipped off the police, which would make sense if Garrett is A or a part of Jenna and him being A. I don't know how it works because it's like if these two were A and then now they've broken up, who gets custody of A? You know what I mean? Because it seems like Jenna and her new boy toy, Noel, are still keeping up their half of the A festivities. And then he's also still doing some A stuff just on his own, vigilante style. Anyway, the cops bring Caleb in with his computer. And they're like, you better open up this computer. You better give us this password and show us what's on here. And so he plays along. He logs in. But he's got Hannah and Spencer off on a computer trying to shut down his computer from a different location. And Hannah and Spencer manage to wipe his computer from where they were. And it was like literally seconds before the cops were going to find the stuff that could put Caleb away for life. Well, maybe not for life. I don't know what jail time is for a teenage boy who hacks the school files, but they were acting like he'd go away for life. But anyway, Caleb is home free. He's able to get a little bit more of the video off of A's cell phone, which they look at the box and then someone's like, oh no, she's coming. We assume that means Allison is coming, but it's not Allison that walks in the room. It's Melissa. So now our main girls are like, oh my gosh, Spencer, your sister is a part of this. They're like, Spencer, dude, your sister may have helped kill Allison. What is going on? And Spencer's like, well, let me talk to her, guys. We don't know that for a fact. And so Spencer goes to talk to Melissa, but then Melissa is like walking up to the restaurant. Garrett, the cop, pulls up. She gets in the car with him and then texts Spencer being like, oh, sorry, can't make it. And then we learn that Garrett, the cop, has been going with Melissa to her baby doctor appointments. Dude, the people in this town, they pass partners around like it's a wine tasting. They're like, well, I have a little bit of this. Oh, here, try this. It's great. Fast forward a little bit, and Melissa finally does talk to Spencer. Spencer's like, I want you to tell me what you were going to tell me about Ian back then, but then you didn't. And she's like, I will, but we can't do it here. We can't do it in the house. So Spencer goes with Melissa to a secondary location, and Spencer leaves her phone at home. So that's as far as we got with that particular story arc, but I'm very excited to keep watching and learning more because this show is heating up real good for the season 2 finale. Moving on, let's just rapid fire a bunch of evil stuff that people do in these episodes. A sends Spencer a picture of her and Toby kissing after she was supposed to have broken up with him as per their agreement. And A sends with the picture a message that says, I warned you. Shortly after that, A messes with Toby's scaffolding for a construction project he's working on. He goes flying. He ends up in the hospital. A sends a message saying, almost got him. Toby won't be so lucky next time. So Spencer, who is so scared that A is going to kill Toby, breaks up with Toby permanently. And she does this by getting Emily to go in there and be like, Toby, Spencer's been cheating on you. And he believes her. It works. And so they're pretty much done. Toby leaves town after that. It's pretty sad. Meanwhile, Hannah's new stepsister, yes, her dad did end up getting married to his new lady. And she has a daughter. She is evil. She's been evil this whole time. I don't think I've really talked about her much, but she's evil. She is now going to school with the main girls. And then she sends out a naked picture of herself from Hannah's phone so that it looks like Hannah sent out a picture of her naked. There's a whole bunch of drama that goes with that, but it gets resolved because, you know, our 4 main characters, they're best friends. They've dealt with a lot worse than just some evil stepsister. They end up tricking the stepsister into confessing that it was her all along. They record it, and Hannah's home free for that one. We see that A has stolen a gun from Spencer's dad's desk and has been using it with target, like been practicing shooting it. So that leads me to believe A is about to shoot somebody. I'm excited to see how that plays out. Speaking of Spencer's dad, turns out he had an affair with Allison's mom, and Jason is in fact his son, which makes Jason Spencer's half-brother. And now they're working together like family. So that leads me to believe that Jason is definitely not A. He seems to be completely on the same side as the girls, and honestly, that makes me happy. Maya, Emily's old girlfriend, has been back in town. They had some issues at first, but now they are officially dating again. Emily couldn't be more excited until Maya gets caught with weed again. And she's probably going to get sent away to that like conversion camp place again, which is very sad. But she's like, I can't do it. And she tries to get Emily to run away with her. But Emily's like, I can't run away with you. I have a swim scholarship. Maya runs away anyway, even though Emily wouldn't go with her. And that's crazy. Emily's doing whatever she can to try to like call and get in contact with Maya. Nothing. Emily's leaving messages like, hey, I still haven't heard from you. Are you breaking up with me? Where are you? And then she's like, I love you, Maya. Fast forward to the end of episode 21, and a cop is knocking on Emily's door, and he's like, I've got news about Maya. Which leads me to believe, I think Maya's dead, dude. But we don't get an answer, so hopefully we'll find out next episode. But yeah, dude, pretty crazy. Detective Wilden, I think it's Wilden, but Wilden is funnier. He manages to get a photo from the security camera feed at the hospital that shows the girls stealing the autopsy report from the morgue. So now they got to deal with that whole issue. A sends Aria's dad a letter with a location telling him to meet there that night to see what his daughter's up to. That location is the restaurant where Aria is supposed to be meeting Ezra in secret. Because yes, they are still dating. Luckily, or I don't know if it's lucky, but Arya gets lucky and cancels her plans at the last second, which saves her dad from seeing Ezra at the restaurant. The close call does make Ezra rethink things, and he breaks up with Arya, which devastates Arya. Arya's in her room crying. Her mom's like, "What's wrong?" And she's like, "You got what you wanted." And meanwhile, Arya's also upset because her dad got Ezra this job like across the country, which usually is a very nice thing, but he just wants him away from his daughter, you know? After screaming at her mom a little bit, Arya runs off to Ezra's apartment. Arya's mom follows her there, and she doesn't go to bust them or anything. She wants to listen because even though she's upset, she does not want to lose her daughter. And the show kind of sets up this moment for us to be like, oh, thank God, they can be together. Fuck you. I'm on Arya's dad's side, dog. She's 17. I don't know how old Ezra is, but he's at least graduated college because he's a teacher. Since we brought up Arya's mom, she actually comes up quite a bit. Arya's mom looks at the letter that A sent Arya's dad about meeting at that restaurant to try to bust them and notices the -A. A is the same person that sent Arya's mom a letter all the way in season 1 exposing her husband's affair. So now Arya's mom is looking into who A is. Arya's mom is not the only parent on to A. So is Hannah's mom. In episode 21, we find out that the girls are not the only people being threatened by A. Mona has also been getting texts from A. A is threatening to expose Mona for shoplifting. And then A sends Mona a picture of Hannah's mom sleeping with Detective Wilden because like Hannah's mom was trying to keep Hannah from going to jail for shoplifting. And then A tells Mona if she doesn't put out that picture of them sleeping together and the police report of Hannah's shoplifting thing that got thrown out, obviously, because of the sleeping stuff, then if Mona doesn't do that, doesn't put it out there in the local gossip sites, then A is going to get Mona arrested for shoplifting. But Mona has connected with all of the girls lately. In fact, Emily actually gives her like a heartfelt apology about how she was treated when Allison was still alive. And it really seemed to mean a lot to Mona. And Mona actually helps Emily get back on the swim team. And now that A is harassing Mona as well, the girls kind of bring Mona in as their 5th member, which I think is a pretty wholesome way for the whole Mona story arc to conclude. I mean, this is someone who was bullied and harassed by that clique when Allison was at the lead of it. And now Mona has been fighting to be Hannah's friend and to stay Hannah's friend. And now she's all of their friend. And I know in some of the recent episodes, they've been really trying to make it look like Mona and Lucas are A. But we've decided there's no way that Lucas is A. And after what happens at the end of that episode, there's no way that Mona could be A. Because at the end of that episode, it's deadline time. Mona has to either expose Hannah and her mom or get arrested for shoplifting. And Hannah walks up to her and Hannah's like, "Hey, I just want you to know I totally understand. I do not hold it against you. We understand how A is. We are not going to be mad at you." But Mona did not throw Hannah's mom under the bus. Mona turned herself in for shoplifting. And then right after that, A threatens Mona again, but Hannah grabs Mona, takes her over to the other lunch table where all 5 of them eat together. It is 5 Pretty Little Liars now. They are a wholesome group of friends. That's enough to make a grown man cry. And, you know, that's coming from me, a grown man. I am very invested in this show, though. I am very, like that, it was very heartwarming to see Mona get accepted and have a group of friends now, you know. That was very sweet. Back to my point, during all of this Mona and Hannah's mom situation, the police report gets left out and Hannah's mom finds it. Hannah's mom thinks that Detective Wilden actually sent it to Hannah because, you know, she doesn't know about A yet. So Hannah's mom goes to Detective Wilden and is like, "What do you think you're doing?" And he's like, What are you talking about? I wouldn't let this out. This could get me fired." And then they're both like, "Well, then who sent this to Hannah?" So now both of them are on to A as well. It looks like A has finally slipped up enough and made enough little mistakes that a lot of people know about A. Now, for the final major plot point that we got in this batch of episodes, the girls are looking through the box of Allison stuff that Jason gave to Arya, and they figure out that Allison was being targeted and harassed by A before Allison disappeared. So they're finding out that A has been around a lot longer than they realized. Now, obviously, we knew that because we saw the flashback episode, but they didn't know that. We also find out that Allison had an alter ego called Vivian Darkbloom. She would like wear a brunette wig and be mysterious. Like she even had a fake ID with that name. They follow that Vivian Darkbloom lead, which leads them to a dry cleaners, and they find a like red trench coat that Allison would wear when she was Vivian. In the pocket of that jacket was a phone number, which belonged to a guy. That guy knew Vivian and says that he works for a cell phone company. And the reason that he knew Vivian is because Vivian hired him to find out who was sending her the texts from A. She never paid him his $2,000 for doing that, but he did give her the information that he found, which means two things. One, if the four girls can scrape together $2,000, they can also find out who was sending the messages from A. And two, Allison knew who A was. And that is probably why Allison died. So now the girls have to find $2,000, which usually wouldn't be a problem for Spencer, but that's a whole issue. Spencer is pretty much cut off because she hasn't been going home. She found out her dad had a secret affair with her best friend, had a son who was her best friend's older brother. You know, typical teen problems. And Spencer is especially upset with her dad because the whole reason that Jason found out that his real dad was Spencer's dad is because he was going through Allison's stuff and he found love letters that Allison had been keeping that Spencer's dad was sending to Allison's mom. And when he found those love letters in Allison's things, Allison also had a ton of money in there. So that causes Jason and Spencer to put two and two together and they realize, oh, Allison was blackmailing Spencer's dad over, the information that her brother was actually his son. So Spencer goes home to try to find some money, runs into her dad, and confronts her dad about it. But get this, guys, Spencer's dad says that he was never blackmailed by Allison. And he does seem very sincere. Spencer believes him, so do I. So Spencer tells Jason, and Jason's like, well, if she wasn't blackmailing him, then where'd all this money come from? Which I have a theory about that. This is just speculation on my part. I think Spencer's dad's telling the truth. I think that he was not being blackmailed by Allison. I think Spencer's mom was being blackmailed by Allison, and she was the one paying Allison to not expose them. Because Allison loved secrets and torturing people when she knew those secrets. In fact, in a flashback, we realized that Allison had been tormenting Jason and Spencer with this secret, and they just didn't even realize it. Allison loves messing with people so much, there is no way she had that information about a secret baby and a love affair and didn't tell anybody. That being said, Jason and Spencer are now siblings. They're working together. Jason gives Spencer the $2,000 to figure out who's sending those texts. The girls meet with the guy, give him the $2,000, and he gives them the information. So you're saying, so we know who A is, right? No, it's not a name, it's an address. It's the address that A was sending the text messages from. They look up the text messages. It's an old law firm that is like not even around anymore. And so then they're like, well, what does this law firm have to do with anything? What was A doing at this law firm? A worked at this law firm? But then Hannah finds out through her mom, because Hannah's mom used that same law firm for her divorce. And Hannah's like, why'd you use that law firm? Did you know someone there? And Hannah's mom's like, yeah, Melissa, Spencer's sister, she interned there. Dude, I know. So now Melissa, Spencer's sister, is like suspect numero uno. And that leaves a big question on the table. We are flying closer and closer to the finale of season 2. Could this just be a huge red herring? Or could this be the start of the reveal? Melissa has been a major part of the show since episode 1. And while we have never seriously considered her as a suspect, we did have that theory that we thought that she set her sister up that night at the church when Ian was trying to kill her. Remember? Because she left her cell phone. And if we go all the way back to season 1, my first video, I think we even locked in Melissa at some point because I was like, what if she found out that Ian was seeing Allison and snapped and killed Allison, like out of jealousy? Which leads us to that video that they pulled from A's phone where Melissa shows up in Allison's bedroom along with Ian, Jenna, and Garrett. And now we find out that Allison was receiving text messages from A that were sent from the same law firm that Melissa was interning at. And this is like, it's all coming together. But Melissa's pregnant. No one's gonna suspect the innocent pregnant girl. Likely story. But that being said, it is extremely possible that Melissa is just our final big red herring. The show giving one last big misdirection so that we don't pay attention to who really is A. We still haven't figured out who is in Jason's house. So that is a big mystery still on the table. Ezra still wildin'. Also, there's my Allison is still alive theory. Still could be possible. So that being said, I think everything that's been thrown in our face is just a big misdirection, a big distraction to keep us from a shocking reveal. And the only person that I can think of that is feasible of being A and would be a shocking reveal is Ezra, aka Mr. Fitz, aka the English teacher, aka Arya's boyfriend, aka the grown man dating a teenager, aka A, baby.
Tuesday, Pretty Little Liars is all new.
Oh my god, how could you?
Everyone has a secret to hide.
You're playing with fire. What I wouldn't give for just a nice, simple nightmare. Something with a lot of spiders.
Some secrets
What is this place?
should stay hidden.
Oh my god.
An all new Pretty Little Liars.
Episodes 22 and 23, baby. Now, in these two episodes, we don't get a whole lot of evidence on who A is. However, we do get some big clues that help us eliminate some major suspects. Call me crazy, and throughout these videos, many have, but I think that after these two episodes, we can eliminate almost every single character on this wall. So, first up, Maya is not dead. Maybe. See, Maya has in fact gotten into contact with Emily, her girlfriend, kind of. Remember, Maya ran away. The issue is I don't know how true that is. You see, Emily, her dad comes to visit, and they go and check out the train station where supposedly Maya had went through. And the ticket guy said that he saw Maya get into a black car. Now I'm thinking that could be A, or it could be unrelated. But Emily has not actually spoken to Maya verbally. It's been all through texts and emails. And I think that is going to become a problem because Emily called Maya's mom and was like, yeah, no, I heard from her. Now, moving on from that whole plot line, we have some stuff with Spencer's family going on. See, Melissa is talking to her sister Spencer, and she says that the summer that Allison disappeared, their parents had been fighting a lot. And then, when Allison disappeared, they stopped. And when their dad heard the news of what had happened to Allison, he seemed almost relieved. Now, Melissa also tells Spencer that she had caught Allison and Ian flirting. And Melissa was sending Allison some texts telling her that she needs to back off. Now, that would explain why the guy that the girls had met to figure out the location of where the texts from A were coming from that summer to Allison. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? That would explain why Allison was getting threatening text messages from the law firm that Melissa used to work at. Because Melissa was sending her threatening messages. But that doesn't necessarily mean that she's A, right? And Spencer also latches on to this idea and asks her sister, did she sign her text messages? You know, asking her if she did -A at the end of them. And Melissa's like, what? No, she knew the texts were from me. Which, if you ask me, does seem pretty legit, especially when you find out from that Jonah guy, the guy who used to work for the phone company, there was 2 numbers sending threatening messages to Allison. So that means that we can assume one of them was coming from A, the other coming from Melissa. Because that's the thing about Allison. Everyone wanted to kill that girl. And frankly, I kind of do too. It's a good thing I wasn't in this show, because I would have been all over this board. You know what? That's exactly what this show needs. Another brunette white guy. But like I said, the guy says that there was 2 different numbers sending threatening texts, and he does give them a rough address of where the other threatening texts were coming from. We'll get back to that in a minute. First, let's stay on track with Spencer and Melissa's family. Spencer goes through her dad's desk and finds a bunch of tax paperwork. And in it, finds out that her dad spent $15,000 on something. Now, that is the exact amount of cash that Allison had stowed away in her bedroom. Now, Spencer thinks that this proves that her dad was being blackmailed by Allison. However, Spencer's dad talks to Spencer and explains that that money was not given to Allison. That money was given to a private investigator that he had paid to try to figure out what had happened to Allison after she disappeared. Now, when Spencer is like, why would you do that? He goes, to protect Melissa. He says that Melissa had been texting Allison a lot of threats that summer, and he wanted to find what happened to Allison before Melissa could become a suspect in her disappearance. In this scene, Spencer's dad also finds out that his gun is missing from his desk. Now, we also find out that Spencer's mom implies that Spencer's dad isn't the one who came up with this idea. It was Spencer's mom. And the way that this was presented was like it's a really big clue. However, I don't really get why. But I will say in these 2 episodes, Melissa, Spencer's sister, looks extremely guilty. And Spencer's mom does seem guilty of something. I just don't know what. I don't think Spencer's mom is A, if that's what you're thinking, because I'm not. Melissa is kind of the obvious choice for A right now, which leads me to believe that it's not her. Hannah, meanwhile, finds out that her mom has been working with Detective Wilden. It's pronounced Wilden, you know. They're working together to figure out who A is. And Hannah's mom and Aria's mom meet up to talk about it because they both know about A now and they're trying to get to the bottom of this. Oh, and A is watching the 2 moms have this conversation, by the way. So my thought process is maybe one of the moms or both of the moms get too close to some information about A, and that's where Spencer's dad's gun that A stole might come into play. Because you guys know about Chekhov's gun, right? But did you know about A's gun? It means that thing could go off at any moment, and someone's mom might die. Now, let's go back to that address I was talking about that the phone guy gave to the girls. He's not able to get them an exact address like he was last time, but he's able to give them a rough area. You know, because that's super helpful. But he gives them the rough area, it leads them to a street, and on that street is a creepy doll hospital. So the girls are outside of this creepy doll hospital, it's closed, they're trying to look into it. Aria is cold and puts on a coat. The only coat available is Allison's old red trench coat that she would wear when she was Vivian Darkbloom. The second Aria puts on the coat, a guy walking by goes, "Vivian?" And she's like, "You know Vivian?" Aria meets with the guy. His name is Duncan. Turns out he was friends with Allison. And he even knew her real name. Like, he didn't know her just as Vivian. He knew her as Allison as well. Aria breaks the news to him that Allison is dead. And he seems like really distraught about it. And, you know, she's like, yeah, this is the weekend that she disappeared. And he's like, I saw her that weekend. And I was like, oh shit, dude. This Duncan guy just proved my theory that Allison was actually alive after she disappeared. But then we find out that he had saw her that morning. So, you know, she disappeared later that night. Turns out he's a pilot, and she had asked him to fly her back to Rosewood from Hilton Head. Now, the reason that this is so interesting is because it means that Allison was actually back in town hours and hours before she arrived later that day. Because, when we saw the flashback of when she first arrived, she gets out of a cab and they're like, oh, she's back. And she's like, yep, I just got home. Turns out she had already been there for like 6 hours. So, what was she doing for 6 hours? Probably up to no good. It's because she's always on that damn phone. Now, let's talk about one of the biggest suspects that we've had since the very beginning of the show, and that is Jenna. Now, lately, the show has pretty blatantly been going, hey guys, Jenna is A. But in these episodes, we find out that Jenna is not A. And we find out another major suspect is not A either. Jenna has gotten her eye surgery on one of her eyes at least, and she's back walking around with her stepbrother, Toby. Now, this is pretty wild, but Toby, very upset with his ex-girlfriend Spencer because he thinks that she cheated on him, with a doctor nonetheless. So the girls, including Spencer, think the reason that Toby is doing this is to spite Spencer. Then, one night, Hannah runs to Jason's house to grab something from his front porch, and she accidentally shows up just in time to save Jenna from the house being on fire. And then, right as Hannah and Spencer drag Jenna out of the house blows up, like with a bomb. In the hospital, Jenna finds out that Hannah is the one who saved her life, and she decides that she wants to speak to the girls. She tells them what happened. She says she received a text from Jason saying that he wanted to talk to her, so she goes to the house. Someone lets her inside. Very shortly after, she couldn't breathe, and smoke was everywhere, and that is all she remembered. But we find out Jason wasn't anywhere near that house. So that means that this was A trying to kill Jenna. That would mean, logically, Jenna is not A. A was trying to kill her, which, gives her a clean bill of innocence in my book. And we also get this moment. It's a really intense moment where Jenna is like sobbing, and she truly seems just so scared and vulnerable. And she asks Hannah, why in the world would she save her? And Hannah just says, you're welcome. It was a really beautiful moment, a really beautiful scene that I think really wraps up Jenna's arc from this hatred after, her incident that caused her to go blind. And now it's kind of this acceptance of and forgiveness. She thought these girls, Aria, Emily, Hannah, and Spencer, were just as evil as Allison, but they're not. Oh, and remember how I mentioned we find out another major suspect is not A? During the end credits scene, from A's point of view at the end of episode 23, we see A planting a police badge at the scene of Jason's house where Jenna was almost killed. I think that A is trying to blame Garrett for Jenna's accident, which means that if A is trying to frame Garrett, he is not A. So we find out that two of the biggest prime suspects for who A could be is not A. Now we have just one more major clue to talk about from these episodes before we can start talking about suspects and theories. The girls get some of Allison's old things from Jason, and they're searching through all of her things trying to find some sort of clue. But they can't find anything until they look at the newspaper that was used to wrap up some of the things. They're looking at the newspaper, and Allison had highlighted different things in the newspapers. And the newspapers are kind of pointing the girls at what Allison was doing and where she was that morning that she was in town 6 hours before she claimed to be. So I'm assuming the next episode will pick up from there and we will go venture off to this land. And that will hopefully lead to some more clues. Now, let's talk about who A could be. Now, we've ruled out all of the major red herrings at this point. No longer Garrett and Jenna. We've already ruled out Mona and Lucas, the yearbook guy. Can't be Ian. Ian's dead. pretty sure it's not Jason, and it's not any of the 4 main girls. It's not Hannah's mom, it's not Arya's mom, and it's not Detective Wilden, because those 3 are all searching for who A is. It's probably not Arya's brother. It's not Emily's parents. It's not Noel Kahn. It's not Toby. And last but not least, it's not Caleb. So, suspect-wise, who does that leave us? Well, we have Melissa, Spencer's sister, still on the table. Both of Spencer's parents are pretty suspicious. Arya's dad is surprisingly an option. Ezra is very much an option. Maya seems like she can't be an option because she doesn't live there, and she didn't live there when Allison was alive either. But I am thinking it would be a fun twist if Maya was a student there at the school the whole time for years. No one knew her, and then she rebranded herself with like a makeover. And then now her whole disappearing, running away act is because the heat was getting to be a little bit too much in A's kitchen, you feel? I think that theory is pretty unlikely, but not impossible. We also have the possibility of Allison being alive somehow. I do not know how that would work, but I can't rule it out. There's Hannah's dad, but I think that's pretty unlikely. Hannah's evil stepsister, even more unlikely. And then I think that's it, right? That's pretty much every suspect. That's pretty much every character in the show. So out of all of these options, who could it be? Who am I going to lock in? If it, of course, is the multiple personality theory that we've been cooking with, I think it would have to be someone other than the 4 girls, which in that case could open up all of the suspects once again. My thought process is that it's probably a guy, because I mean, you know, you have to be pretty strong to move Ian's giant dead body. And to be completely honest, no one on our suspect list really seems to be that strong. I mean, maybe Spencer's dad. I mean, I guess it could be Ezra. I mean, when I look at the remaining suspects on the wall, I don't really know how it could be anyone other than him. He is the only person on this wall that is pretty much disconnected from everyone else on the wall. He's seemingly the nicest guy ever. He's very attached to his English student, aka girlfriend, aka Arya, who just so happens to be one of the 4 main victims of A. And did I mention she's also a teenager? Say, Ezra, I heard you like 'em young. You better never go to cell block 1. And then, you know, of course, Melissa seems like the obvious answer. But is it too obvious? Just like it was way too obvious when Lucas and Mona in the flashback episode was essentially just like, hey, these 2 people are A. I mean, there's literally a scene in that episode where Lucas and Mona are talking, and they're like, she's gonna get what's coming to her. I mean, we're 2 episodes away from the season 2 finale, and it really does seem like they have been building up to the big A reveal. So, I mean, we could get the big A reveal as early as next episode, and then the last episode of the season is like doing some cleanup work for some extra mystery stuff. So I need to make sure that my guess for this section is really solid, because this could be my last locked in pick. And in this video, I have locked in a lot of different suspects. So who do I think would just be a good reveal? Spencer's mom might be a pretty cool A reveal. She was just trying to protect her family. She had to kill Allison. But then, how would she really be A? A really needs to be someone who is at the high school a lot. Ezra fits that category. I really do think that I'm going to lock in Ezra once again as my guess on who is A. But also, could Allison still be alive? That could be a huge theory. That could be the reveal. I mean, I think it would definitely be the biggest shock factor. Her body had been hidden away for a year before they found her body, so the body could be pretty disfigured, so they wouldn't be able to necessarily instantly realize it was her. Now, they did do an autopsy on the body, so I guess that would confirm that that's her body. And also, where would Allison be like hiding this entire time? We do find out that Spencer's lake house, A has been practically living in there. So I guess that could answer that. Or maybe that's who's hiding in Jason's house, who, even though he's like a good guy now, we still don't know who's in his house. And I mean, since we're so close to the end of the season, I'm assuming the big reveal of who is in the house with him could also be the big reveal of who A is. But how would Allison be able to like hide in the school, in the hallways, in the classrooms? We do know that she liked to wear wigs and disguises. Maybe it's someone who's been around in the background and we just weren't paying close enough attention. I think there might be way too many holes in that theory though for her to actually be alive. Like, even if it's like some reason the autopsy report didn't figure out that it wasn't her body, it still doesn't explain how she would be able to get close enough to leave some of the messages that the girls have gotten these past 2 seasons without being seen by somebody. I also don't understand how we had that whole conversation with Jenna and Garrett where they practically confessed to all of it. I do not know, guys. I do not know. For episodes 22 and 23 of season 2 of the teen drama Pretty Little Liars, I am locking in my guess, Ezra Fitz, for who is A.
What do we do now? We're too close to back off.
The race to find answers is on.
Allison took out a classified ad and A responded.
A is everywhere,
They just sent you this?
and everyone is a suspect.
Melissa could have killed Allison. Say that again?
Just one more episode until A is revealed.
I just watched episode 24 of season 2 of the show Pretty Little Liars, a teen drama that first aired in 2010, and this was the last episode before the season 2 finale. And you know, I don't usually like to look at those kind of things, but I got very excited, and it really seems like the episode description for the season 2 finale heavily implies that we might get the big reveal of who A is. So, I think that means that this is my final chance to lock in who did it and solve the mystery. Now, this episode gives us a ton of action and we get a bunch of clues. But then at the end of this episode, we get a huge, shocking moment that pretty much gets rid of my big theory that I had gathered from this episode. So, before the ending pretty much changes my whole big theory, I do want to kind of tell you guys my big theory, which involved a psychic boy that we meet. Yeah, I said psychic. The girls end up going to that creepy hospital doll thing place store. We mentioned it last part. It's a doll hospital. And they go there because they find out that Allison had been communicating to someone through the newspaper. And we're pretty sure Allison was communicating with A. And the last little classified section of the newspaper of them communicating back and forth, they talked about where they were going to meet, and they were going to meet on that street. Now, at the doll hospital, we meet the old lady who runs it. But more importantly, we meet her grandson. And this kid, fucking terrifying. He seems to be some sort of psychic, and he knows all about Allison and how she was buried alive, which was private information known only by the cops, and you know, the autopsy wasn't public record. And he actually says that he warned Allison that someone was out to get her. And he goes, a couple with dark brown hair. And when Hannah's like, well, the girl in the couple, was she blind? And he goes, no, she can see. And so I was going to spend this entire section of this video pointing out every couple that has dark brown hair, which is most of them. But then at the end of the episode, we get one of those end credit scenes from the point of view of A. And A is talking to the lady who runs the store and her psychic grandson. And it seems like they have a deal where A told them what to say to the girls. So none of the information that we learned can really be used because I'm assuming it's just A giving them information that A wants them to think. So what can we use from this episode? Thanks for asking. Well, Spencer saw and talked to Allison. You know, the dead girl. It was seemingly a dream or a reaction to the medicine that Spencer had been taking. but she swears up and down that Allison was real. And she talks to Emily about it, and Emily tells her that she also saw Allison when she almost died, and that her conversation with Allison felt so real too. And plus, we never learned who dragged Emily out of that barn. Seemingly the ghost of Allison. And I don't remember, but I don't think that the other girls know that Hannah also saw Allison after she was hit by a car. I don't remember if Aria at any point talked to Allison, like in a dream or anything. I don't think so. My point is, it seems practically impossible for Allison to still be alive. However, what if she is? When Spencer woke up from her dream, the door was wide open. Was it from A or someone else, or was it from Allison? Here's what's even crazier. If Allison is alive, I don't think she's A. Because whenever she shows up to talk to the girls, she's trying to help them figure out who A is. So then I'm like, let's go back to other theories. Remember the, a different personality theory. I'm like, well, maybe the reason that Spencer is seeing Allison and talking to Allison is because that is a personality in her head. And I know we've gone back and forth on that theory for hours and hours at this point, but I just can't seem to figure out how any of this is possible. How can A be any of these characters? How can A possibly know everything about everybody at every time? I digress. Let's talk about the next really big thing in this episode. Jenna takes her bandage off after her experimental eye surgery, and we find out that it did not work. She is still blind. We get this moment where she walks up to the girls and she just is like breaking down, and she apologizes to them and just wants to move on. Some of the girls buy the apology, some of them don't, but it leaves them all with a really big question, which is, if Jenna's not A, then who is? Now, the girls mention Garrett and Melissa as their two prime suspects. And because of that, Spencer confronts her sister again. Spencer shows her sister the video that they have of Melissa and Ian and Jenna and Garrett in Allison's bedroom the night that she died. And Melissa threatens her. She tells Spencer that she's seen videos of her and her friends that make them look extremely bad. Now, this reaction to the confrontation makes her look extremely guilty. So, the girls decide that they need to set a trap for her. And this is where things get crazy, so buckle up. Hannah sends her boyfriend, Caleb, and her bestie, Mona, to a part of town that Melissa's going to be at and has them make out. And they make sure that Melissa sees it. So then, if they get a message from A about them kissing, we know, and they know, Melissa is A. Big brain moves. And it works, by the way. Melissa's walking by the car. She sees the two of them making out. Very shortly thereafter, boom, Hannah gets a message from A, mocking her about her best friend and her boyfriend kissing. So they think that this definitively proves Melissa is in fact A. But Spencer is conflicted. I mean, it's her sister. They need more proof. So they go to the psychic kid to talk to him about what he knows. They go to the doll hospital place. No one's there, but they manage to get inside. And it becomes a fucking horror movie in there, dude. The dolls start talking. We see a doll dressed as Allison, like half in the dirt. And the Allison doll is saying, "Follow me, end up like me," over and over and over. Then A is actually in there with them, starts pushing over shelves and stuff. It is actually, and I'm not joking, I'm not being hyperbolic, so scary. And if I'm being completely honest, this show is really hitting its stride. Really great stuff. After that, Garrett and Melissa are seen kissing. And then the cops show up and arrest Garrett for Allison's murder. You know how many times someone in this show has been arrested for her murder? A lot. Almost never for the right reasons. This time it was because Jenna took the autopsy report that Garrett had given to her to destroy, and Jenna gives it to the cops and she's framing Garrett. Oh, and get this, guys. I'm pretty sure Jenna can see. I think. I'm not positive, but we get a really close-up shot of her eyes and then she swats a fly. So, you know, in my eyes, well, her eyes, I think she can see is what I'm saying. And she's playing everyone for some reason, right? But what could the reason be? Maybe that she actually is A. Maybe it was a double fake out. Hey, she confesses to being A practically. Psych, she can't be A. Haha, psych again. She is A. But if I'm being honest, I don't know. I feel like that would be disappointing, be kind of obvious. I also don't think Melissa is A, even though she was acting super suspect. Now, let's talk about my favorite suspect and the one that I have locked in quite often lately, Ezra Fitz. In this episode, Arya gets in a huge fight with her parents about everything that's been going on. They try to send her to boarding school. Arya threatens her dad and says that she's going to tell everyone about his affair with his student. And when she does that, she pretty much blows up her whole family. Her mom is ashamed of her. Her dad is heartbroken. Her dad then gets Ezra fired from the college that they both work at. And then the last thing that we see of Ezra and Arya in this episode is that they break up. And then they have sex. Now remember, he's like, I don't know, 22, 23. She's 16. If he's not A, what are we doing here, guys? I also want to pose the question of who has been in Jason's house? We have yet to get the big reveal about that. Maybe we will next episode, and maybe it could be A, but it's a big question. I have no idea who A is. I have no idea who A could possibly be at this point. I feel like there has to be someone up here or someone that I forgot to put on the wall that is just like, I'm just overlooking. Like maybe like Arya's mom or something. I think that I would die, in fact, if it was Arya's mom turned out to be A. Because there's no way. I mean, who else? Hannah's mom? She's a pretty big character in the show, but is this even a good theory? Like, should I just point out characters I've never seriously suspected? Like Emily's dad. He's always gone because of the military. So, like, what if it's like, well, what if he's not in the military? What if he's actually just in the bushes spying on teenage girls? I mean, there is always someone like Maya who kind of has always given me the creeps a little bit. She's either run away or been killed by A, I think. We don't know yet because she keeps texting Emily. Caleb just doesn't seem like a good choice because he didn't even really show up until season 2. So that means that all of season 1, we were spiraling trying to figure out a mystery when we hadn't even actually met the main suspect. There's always the possibility that it could be one of the main 4 girls. If it was one of the main 4 girls, they would have to have a partner because there's no way they could do it themselves. We've seen A or glimpses of A at the same exact time that we've seen all 4 girls together. I really thought that I was the greatest detective on YouTube. But Pretty Little Liars has proven me to be the worst detective on YouTube. Like, I'm joking around, but I am so serious. I do not have any idea who A is. I mean, I've got to lock in a guess, and it's got to be a big one because I think we get the reveal next episode. So whoever I lock in, this could be it. Dude, I think I'm going to have to go with the Ezra theory. I mean, we have had this same Ezra and Arya storyline for 40 episodes. In fact, that is one of my only complaints about this show. The pilot episode and the first few episodes really make it out to seem like Arya is the main character of the show. But then she's just kind of tucked away with this Ezra storyline. Will they get caught? Oh, nope, they didn't get caught. Oh, I think they're about to get caught. Nope, they didn't get caught. I mean, the two of them are completely cut from the entire rest of the show. A lot of the time. Off on their own little world. Not having any relation with the rest of the show. Dude, In 2 seasons, do you know how many girlfriends Emily has had? Emily has had so many girlfriends and a boyfriend that we got repeat girlfriends twice. Hannah has had a ton of different love interests, finally settling on one that I think we all agree is very dreamy. Spencer has had a few love interests, but we've settled with Toby. Big fan of Toby. Major victim of our friend Toby. And meanwhile, while all this is happening, Arya's off with Ezra in his apartment, playing Scrabble or whatever the fuck an English teacher does with his student. And Ezra never even really interacts with the other 3 main characters of the show, except for on very rare occasions. And Ezra hasn't been a part of any of the major A stuff. Every other character on this board has interacted with A at some point, except for Ezra, except for when A almost exposed him for his relationship, but then A saved him and his relationship. And even then, I don't even think he knew about that. So what is the reason to have a character that has pretty much nothing to do with the rest of the show, unless he is actually super important to the rest of the show? Because he is actually A. That's right, baby. I'm locking in Ezra Fitz for who I think A is. Pretty Little Liars. We're about to get the big reveal, I think. If not, it'll be pretty embarrassing. Boom. Ezra Fitz.
Catch up with our Pretty Little Liars marathon. Then,
Be there when the clock strikes midnight.
the spring finale millions are dying to see.
Hello? We didn't come this far to give up.
Finally, A is revealed.
Okay, guys, I was wrong. I messed up. I messed up big time. I feel really stupid. But also, I feel like I didn't get any answers. So, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or should I say the elephant in the room. Mona is A. And so, yeah, that's it. Mona is A. This woman, this young lady, it was Mona, I guess. But we don't really get a lot of answers on why she's A. Like, she says that she decides to be A because Arya, Spencer, and Emily stole Hannah from her, and they took away her only friend. But that doesn't even make any sense, dude. Because A is the one who brought the girls back together and made them close again. And she implies that she killed Allison because she wanted to be friends with Hannah. And then Spencer is like, well, then why did you hit Hannah with a car? And she says some fucking parable about it's easier to forgive a friend than an enemy. Or I think she said it the other way around. It's easier to forgive a enemy than a friend. And then also Jenna meets with Mona, I think. And so it seems like Jenna was working with Mona as A. And then at the masquerade ball, which, by the way, this whole episode takes place at a masquerade ball, we see Lucas with Jenna. So does that mean that Lucas was also working with Mona? I mean, that's the thing, dude. This episode didn't give us any answers other than the fact that Mona is A. Which even that, dude. So Mona apparently has some sort of mental disorder that, mixed with her hyper intelligence, allows her to seem omnipresent, and that's how she's able to know everything all of the time. Which I don't know what that means at all. I think it means that she was like so smart, and she watched the people in the town so closely and often that it got to the point where she was able to just kind of like correctly assume everything that they did in their lives. I don't get that at all, though. I need answers. We didn't get any answers. I want to know what Ian and Melissa and Garrett and Jenna were doing in Allison's bedroom the night she died. I want to know if Mona killed Ian. How did this young lady drag his heavy dead body by how did she do that? There's a million mysteries that we've been going through from season 1 through season 2, and I don't have answers to any of them. We get this point where Mona is trying to get Spencer to join Team A. So that leads me to believe that A is a bunch of people, and it's insinuated that like Lucas and Jenna were a part of this. I am somehow more confused now that I know who A is than I did before I knew who A was. Also, I would like to point out, I locked in Mona in season 1. Like, the pilot episode, like the first couple episodes made it look so obvious that it was her. And then I don't even remember what happened, but I seemed so confident that it couldn't be her for some reason. I just can't remember why. Because, like, I think at one point I nailed the whole, like, she was the bullied girl who gets revenge and wants to become the popular girl or something like that. I think I said that, right? But just to be clear, and I want to make this extremely transparent, I did not solve this. I mean, by the time we got the reveal that Mona is A, I don't think I even remotely guessed it was her. And that's a whole nother thing. At the end of this episode, and this is probably going to infuriate me and you, if I would correctly assume, if maybe my hyper-intelligence could make me omnipresent and understand what you're thinking right now. At the end of the episode, Mona is in a psych ward and someone visits her. And Mona says, "I did everything you told me to." So, does that mean Mona's not fucking A? Or is Mona A and there's like a new big bad that's been the puppet, been above A? Maybe they're B. So like, I guess the mystery's not done. Like we still have something to solve, which is to be expected. This show has like 7 seasons. Oh, and another thing, they find another body. This time, the body belongs to Maya. Here, hold on. Maya's dead. Emily's girlfriend. Now, I did kind of guess that was the case, because I was pretty sure that Maya's texts to Emily were just A pretending to be Maya. It's the exact same thing A did with Ian. So does that mean that Mona killed Maya? And if Mona killed Maya, why? Or is the new big bad that we meet at the end in the psych ward, is that who killed Maya? Oh, hey, worst thing that happens in this episode by far though, Ezra and Arya are still together. Some other spark notes from the finale. I'm very upset, but I do love this show, by the way. Toby, not actually upset at Spencer at all. He was tricking A. He had to really sell it to make it look like he hated Spencer, so that way he could run off, find the therapist lady. Remember the therapist? Therapist comes back and helps save the day. Did I solve Pretty Little Liars before the reveal? No, not even close. But not yet. There's still mysteries to solve. There will be Pretty Little Liars Part 3. Just give me a little time to decompress. I have some other videos I want to do, but there will be a Part 3. I love this show, and I want to finish the show. Hey, I do want to say thank you guys so much for watching. This has been, I mean, I could never have hoped for these videos to do as well as they have. This has been so much fun. This has been months and months of hard work. Because, I mean, you know, this was 40-something episodes of TV just for these 2 videos. And so, I mean, that alone was like 40 hours. Yeah. So, I hope you subscribe. I hope you stick around and watch other videos that I do. Survivor is going on right now as of the uploading of this video. If you're a Survivor fan, I do have like a Survivor page and podcast that I do with my buddies because we just love Survivor. It's called Making the Merge. There's a link down below if you're interested in that. My other channel, Written By, it's where my short films live. I'm an actor, writer, and me and my buddy Robert, we put a lot of stuff over there. So, thank you guys so much. I really do appreciate it.